Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Platforms such as UA Weapons and Jomini W on Twitter and the Enforcer channel allowed people around the world to follow the war in a depth and a way that had never happened before. Retired General David Petraeus.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
шануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. І душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. І покажем, що ми браття козацького
Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and I am accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 707 of the news. And after a short hiatus of about 2 weeks, Enforcer Matt and the Cult of Matt is back.
And of course, we are going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. But many of y'all may have noticed something that was very big for this channel in our intro tonight. We were mentioned in the book Conflict by General David Petraeus on page 430. I was able to find the book last night, purchase it on Amazon, and read it through. And the massive news finally came true that we have actually been credited as being a revolutionary source of war news and information in the war in Ukraine. We were the only YouTube channel that got credited. The Institute for the Study of War and several Twitter accounts were credited with sharing massive news and information about the war in a way that had never been seen before. But this YouTube channel, the Enforcer YouTube channel, is the only one that was credited by the General as being the YouTube channel to go to see how the war has evolved. That is an incredible...
No, man, I had to come back after seeing that. When I saw the quote in the book, I knew I'm coming back today. Today.
Matthew came back literally after we got that. But what's really wild about that, y'all, is that I got the Kindle book, so I didn't get to see the physical book. I'm going to be getting a physical one and hopefully, keeping that around for record keeping. But what was really crazy is that in the Kindle book, there actually is a little asterisk that you can click on by our name that takes you to where we're credited at the back of the book. And when you do that and you copy and paste that link into a search bar, y'all wouldn't believe it. It brings you to a Ukraine war map that I made on Google My Maps, just like the one we're seeing tonight. To be able to access a map like that, you not only have to click on this live stream and watch it, you actually have to go down below the video to the description, show more of the description, and then scroll down to the bottom and click the link. So many active things, not passive things, but active things had to be done to be able to access one of our Google My Maps. And it shows that apparently we have a very high up person who watches this channel, retired General David Petraeus, the U.S. commander of CENTCOM for several years in the early 2010s, and not only that, the fourth director of the Central Intelligence Agency. We are so honored.
It's crazy to think that such high-profile people like General Petraeus are watching the stream to see what's going on here every single night and then literally include it in his book. That is a huge honor. I was very excited to see that. And also, just to be clear, that was a joke earlier. I didn't come back just because of the quote. I came back for many other reasons as well. Mostly because I missed the LSA so much. It's good to see you all once again. But the book is super cool, I got to say. That got both me and the Enforcer insanely excited to see that.
Oh, I was blown away, y'all. I've been talking about that all day today after I found out, and it has been an absolutely incredible thing. But, of course, without further ado, we do have to do what has made us apparently the stuff of history now at this point, being in the pages of a book that recounts military history from 1945 to the present day. We now actually are in the pages of history, weirdly enough, which feels bizarre. But without further ado, I've got to get y'all into what we are actually known for, which is covering the news of the war in Ukraine and other conflicts around the world. And of course, if you're excited to hear that we were mentioned in the book Conflict by retired General David Petraeus, put a Lee Spring Army in the chat. Just put a little LSA down there, because I would love to know that y'all are as excited as I am to see that we finally got accreditation from someone out there for what this channel has done. But I've got to take y'all down into the region of Crimea tonight, because over the past 24 hours, one of the largest drone attacks to have occurred by Ukraine this year just went underway, destroying a large amount of Russian facilities, radar sites, and anti-air installations. And not only that, obliterating the Russian airfield Belbek Airfield on the northern side of Sevastopol. Belbek Airfield has been a notable place for a high presence of Russian Air Force aircraft. Even on this satellite picture, we can see a large contingent of Su-34 fighter bombers and Su-30s and Su-35s as well, stationed here at this airfield. From what we understand, this was the exact air wing that was at this airbase when the Ukrainian attack occurred. And crazily enough, the attack did not happen at the twilight or at dawn or in the middle of the night. This missile attack was conducted with Scalp EG missiles provided by France in broad daylight. We were able to get videos of the explosions coming from Belbek Airfield that have apparently crippled the Russian air wing here, but I'll be getting you all a little bit more info on that in our next clip of news from Belbek. Here is the slow motion video, by the way, of the first explosion's mushroom cloud from the first Scalp EG that hit the field, and here's the second Scalp EG flying on in. You can see it's going at a pretty fast speed, blasting into the exact same target. And the video clip ends right there. A very small, very brief clip, but giving us that video and picture confirmation we need to know that the attack on Belbek did in fact occur, and there were multiple successful strikes that ended up hitting the airfield. Once again, before we even move on into the next bit of news at Belbek Airfield, we have to give a massive amount of thanks to the nation of France, or the Republic of France, that sent this incredibly generous support in the form of these Scalp EG missiles to Ukraine, so that way they could conduct such a precise strike on Russian military infrastructure. Belbek Airfield was not the only target inside of Crimea today. We have seen that there were other targets attacked within the area of Yekaterinburg, Novofedorivka, and also even further north towards Dzhankoy. But we were not able to get video and picture evidence to confirm those attacks and the severity of their damage. And so for tonight's reasons, they will not be included in the news. Only Belbek Airfield will be included. But the next bit of news we got apparently showed that not only were Russian aircraft targeted at Belbek Airfield, apparently Russian radar stations were also targeted and possibly destroyed in the attack. We can see right here in this picture the radar installations near the airfield being highlighted, and we can see the shadows of their masts being cast across the ground, confirming that they were active and in fact set up. But in these next pictures, you're going to notice that those towers are right where the explosions are occurring in that little short video we just watched a moment ago. And we can see them in another picture from a few weeks, well, actually a few months earlier, right here. This was sometime around late September from what we're understanding when this picture was taken. But nevertheless, once again showing that the Ukrainians are going after certain strategic targets, and specifically the Russian Air Force's aircraft, like the A-50 Mainstay, and also Su-34 fighter bombers, which we're seeing being destroyed in incredibly large numbers. But not only that, we're also seeing that they're going after a massive amount of Russian radar and anti-air installations within the entirety of Crimea. It appears to be a part of a grand strategy by Ukraine to be able to knock out the Russians' eyes over the skies of their own occupied territory, so that way further Ukrainian attacks are wildly more successful due to a low detection rate of their incoming aircraft or incoming drones and missiles. This is something that is very big going on into the future. And not only that, we got one last little bit of news, apparently from the Russians themselves on Telegram, that was the first real damage assessment that we were able to find on the internet. And this is what the Russians had to say about the attack, at least a Russian that was in the area of Belbek Airfield. Bad news from Crimea. We lost 3 planes and more than 20 military personnel. Sources in the Ministry of Defense and the General Staff told U.S. new details, told us new details of the large-scale missile strike on Crimea and Sevastopol, which the enemy launched on Wednesday, January 31st. The enemy, according to data, fired 24 missiles. We failed to shoot down 5 of them. At the Belbek airfield, according to verified information, 3 aircraft, 2 Su-27s, and 1 Su-30 were lost. 2 of them are seriously damaged, but there is still a chance to repair them. 1 plane, unfortunately, was completely destroyed. The missile hit it directly, meaning that airframe practically vaporized on impact. Also, 12 military personnel were killed at and near the airfield, and more than 10 were injured. Some of the planes did not have time to take off after receiving a signal about a missile threat. In this regard, we suffered such heavy losses, said our source in the MOD. Near Gardviosko, sorry everyone, I'm going to butcher
Something
that
like
name
that.
no matter how many tries I give to that. Missiles hit a Special Forces training camp. 9 elite GRU soldiers were killed. That means GRU is another way way to say Spetsnaz, were killed and 7 were wounded. Several pieces of equipment were also lost. And so we're already getting from the Russian side, even if they try and downplay the losses later, the initial casualty reports for the Russian forces are actually very significant. The loss of 2 Su-27s and an Su-30 is showing that they have once again lost irreplaceable airframes that they can no longer produce or manufacture at this point in time. That once again starts to reiterate a very strong idea that the Russian Air Force is probably going to be considering, like they did earlier in the war, moving all of their operational air wings out of Crimea and back into a region like Krasnodar or the Rostov Oblast inside of Russia and operating the Air Force from there. Because due to the massive attacks that the Ukrainians have been conducting very successfully on Russian radar installations within Crimea, this peninsula is probably the most unsafe place for the whole of the Russian Air Force, and at this moment, any of them could be subject to an attack with little to no warning before the Ukrainians are able to strike, probably leading to very high losses and casualties of both airframes and personnel for the Russian Air Force, all of those things being irreplaceable.
So this is shorthand for the Russians can't take their free vacations here anymore. They need to go somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. They're not getting a free vacation anymore. The meal ticket stops here today. And speaking of meal tickets, it appears that the Russians are having a little bit of an issue making sure to get into work and clock in to get their meal ticket, because in the city of Perm today, and this was something that I would say is actually a little bit controversial, but we'll see what y'all think in the chat about this. But some Freedom of Russia Legion partisans, because many of y'all will know that the Freedom of Russia Legion is a fighting force within the Ukrainian army, of course, a group of Russian nationals, but of course operating under the umbrella of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, or as it's called, let me think. Oh my lord, the AFU, the Armed Forces of Ukraine. They still have a large partisan element that works with the Freedom of Russia Legion military unit in Ukraine, but is within Russia and covertly acting on the Freedom of Russia Legion's behalf. We've heard that apparently today within the city of Perm, a major steel factory, is the best way to explain it, apparently had a bomb planted at the entrance. On the 29th of January, partisans from the Freedom of Russia Legion movement placed explosives by the entrance to the Perm metal factory in Perm, Russia, as a warning. According to the caption, they don't want to harm ordinary factory workers, but they will start to carry out attacks on factories and factory leadership in the military-industrial complex. This is starting to kind of move on into that area where people may start to question whether this really is a military target or not. Many people will know that historically, especially in the Second World War, heavy industries such as steel factories were usually considered a military target. Steel is one of the main ingredients of war materials, or really any kind of equipment used by the military at all. Even in the present day, steel is one of the highest used resources of an armed force. And so targeting and stopping the production of steel within an enemy nation like the Russian Federation is actually a very important thing on a grand overview. However, the fact that modern warfare has really started to move on away from attacking general heavy industry like that and more so attacking the factories that actually are producing the weapons, this starts to enter a little bit of a gray area where some people have been saying that this is a questionable practice by the Freedom of Russia Legion. Other people have been saying that this is actually completely justified. And I gotta say, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that these kinds of actions by the Freedom of Russia Legion against Russia's heavy industry are justifiable given the current context of the war? Or do y'all think that this is more so entering into an area of attacking civilians? This is a question that many people have had to argue with. Even in the Second World War, this was a little bit of a discussion had by commanders, especially of the U.S. Army Air Corps and also the Royal Air Force that were conducting bombing campaigns on Germany, as to where the line really is drawn in between military targets and non-military targets. And this is one of those gray areas where the question could be made and really any answer could be a correct one. But moving on from that news within Perm and towards Nizhny Novgorod, this was actually really shocking today. And Matthew, you missed a little bit while you were gone.
Just a little bit over 2 weeks, man. I'm sure like the whole battlefield front changed during that time.
Pretty much inside of Russia it did, because while you were gone, Matthew, the longest range drone attack in the history of the war occurred on the oil port of Ust-Luga, about 25 miles outside of St. Petersburg. It was the longest range attack to date, around 560 miles away from the closest Ukrainian border, and it was confirmed that it was a Ukrainian drone attack that caused the damage and fire at Ust-Luga. However, it appears that that may now be beaten. A drone was downed near the area of Nizhny Novgorod. here's Moscow here. There's Nizhny Novgorod all the way over there. And to measure that out in miles, Nizhny Novgorod is about 493 miles away. And the drone was actually taken down almost on the very eastern border of Nizhny Novgorod itself, almost about 550 miles away. And according to the Russians, it was taken down through electronic warfare means. Usually when the Russians say stuff like this, we wouldn't actually believe it. But what we're starting to hear and see tonight is that it is in fact true. The Russians actually have some picture evidence to confirm that a Ukrainian drone was in fact down with an electronic warfare system. We could see the drone right there, and it is clearly of a Ukrainian make and design. Now this is something big, because this drone apparently was intercepted and taken down in the middle of an empty field in Nizhny Novgorod, practically in the middle of nowhere. Once you start entering this territory of Russia, the lands start to become a lot less populated. It's more sparse, and really there are no small villages. It's only major cities east of Nizhny Novgorod. And so considering that, it seems as though the drone was actually taken down somewhere along its flight path and it had never actually reached its target. Meaning that this drone apparently could fly much farther than 550 miles, which is where it was about taken down. That is something very big to think about, because this drone flew way past Moscow. This thing is going deep into Russia at this point, and it's starting to really throw up an idea that maybe the attack that we saw at Chelyabinsk, where the electrical substation blew up and about a third of the city was left without power, that may have actually been a Ukrainian drone attack that hit that substation, and unofficially it may be the longest range Ukrainian drone attack that we have seen on record. Of course, we can't confirm that at the moment. We never saw a drone actually fly into that substation and hit it, but the fact that this drone was still well on its way and was taken down heading far into eastern Russia, it is not out of the question that this, in fact, could be the start of a good public knowledge that Ukrainian drone attacks can actually strike practically anywhere within Western Russia, and even over the Ural Mountains if needed. But moving on from that crazy news, and even crazier news, Matthew, Ust-Luga is right near St. Petersburg, and I'll actually show you this because you didn't see this back when we were talking about it. This is Ust-Luga, and it is literally just a massive port for oil tankers coming to Russia to load up oil and then export it elsewhere. Look at all these oil tankers.
That's a lot. And also, it's like, did the oil tanker people like have a problem coming into this port? Like what they call Ust-Luga? Like that name's a little bit weird sounding for some reason. I don't know why.
It is. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like some Klingon name for a planet in Star Trek. You're going to the penal colony of Ust-Luga. It's like, what the hell is that?
Something like that.
You know, it's a weird name, but beyond that, of course, Matthew, you and I both know, because we've been doing this for a very long time, the Russian Federation's largest export around the world is oil. It makes up something about 65% of the revenue they make from exports. And that means that not just Ust-Luga is a massive oil target in this northern part of the country, there's also oil refineries within St. Petersburg, and specifically a smaller one right about here. This is a small oil storage facility / refinery type area within the central part of St. Petersburg. And apparently, we were able to see that the Ukrainians must have attacked this massive plant in St. Petersburg, because we got security footage showing that. So here's the clip. Oh, that's a little spicy.
I think the roof is on fire over there.
Man, the building is on fire. But man, we can see the entire place is wrecked, pretty much. Right near the railroad tracks, we can see some trucks also got some of the shrapnel damage as well. Actually, a lot of shrapnel damage. And then we got more pictures actually near the railroads themselves, which you can see right here, this little area. And also you can see these gantries going over the railroad tracks where they, load the cars with oil. And that's a very important thing to remember as far as geolocation goes, because in this picture here, we can see damage to the oil refinery and the rolling stock that was right outside of it. Here's the one picture we just saw in the last video. But then we got this additional picture here showing one of those gantries that's going over the railroad tracks and confirming that this was an attack that apparently occurred within central St. Petersburg. a very big ordeal because this is the middle of the second largest city in the Russian Federation. There is no other city that's larger than this one outside of Moscow, and the fact that a Ukrainian drone was able to fly into this part of St. Petersburg with a massive air defense ring both inside the city and outside the city surrounding it, and then hit its target successfully without even being intercepted or detected until it blew up, it is showing once again that Russian air defense is apparently completely dropping the ball, either due to a massive lack of training, a poor deployment strategy, or even a weakness within their air defense ring. Out of all of those options, one thing's for certain: no one is safe in Russia from their strategic assets getting hit. Not even a major city like St. Petersburg, not even Moscow itself. Both of these major cities have now suffered direct strikes by Ukrainian drones into the direct city center on strategic infrastructure, and it looks like this is going to be the trend going here forward. But incredible news to see, and once again showing us that the Ukrainians are really starting to make technological breakthroughs and really starting to refine drone strategies, tactics, and doctrines, and really getting the most out of the cheapest thing that's being used on the battlefield right now, drone warfare. Moving on out of Russia, however, and towards France, one thing that has been absolutely priceless for the West, and many people have started to realize this, is that the Ukraine war is really starting to show us what a modern war will look like. And no matter how advanced the Western world has gotten, and no matter how far we've moved on from those trenches of the First World War, we are still in a time where if a peer-on-peer war occurs, which means that both sides are very similar in abilities to each other, it will devolve into trench warfare, no matter how advanced the weapons and equipment both sides have is. The French have apparently taken this priceless information that's being learned from the Ukraine war, and they're starting to implement it into their own military. This was actually really cool, Matthew, because we got to see the French army in training based off of what they have seen and learned from the Ukraine war. It was really cool to watch. So here's the clip.
I'm guessing the tanks weren't going in reverse, were they?
Oh, you'll see. You'll see. Here comes the Leclerc. I gotta say, Leclercs are actually really nice looking, at least to me. And we can see them here showing a Leclerc in the tree line. And that's, by the way, the Leclerc main battle tank. That is the standard main battle tank of the French army.
Pretty much resembles an Abrams for the most part.
It kind of does, doesn't it? But what's really cool about the Leclerc is that instead of having a 4-man crew, it's the only main battle tank in NATO that was actually designed by a Western power that has an autoloader inside of it, which is actually very unique to its design. A really cool little deal going on with the Leclerc. But we see French forces here simulating their advance. We can see them actually pulling out Bangalores, which are these small explosive charges that you fit under the barbed wire. You set the fuse, and then you run back a little ways, and it blows up, clearing a way through the barbed wire. Once again, something that has been very prevalent across the battlefields of Ukraine is a lot of barbed wire. We can also see the French are not using, this is actually really cool, they're not using FAMAS bullpup rifles, which is the standard issue rifle for the French army. They're using some kind of an M4 style rifle, or an AR style rifle, which apparently they're starting to learn that bullpups aren't that hot, conventional rifles are. And I like the banana mags. But we can see the French forces talking about, of course, their upcoming battle plan. We can see them using small drones like the Mavic, just like we see in Ukraine. Because everybody's learning, why put millions and millions of dollars into these drone development programs for recon drones when a DJI Mavic can actually just do the job on its own? We can then see the French advancing behind the APCs a lot like we've seen in Ukraine by groups like the 3rd Azov and the Fighting 93rd, and we can now see them simulating the exact kind of trench warfare that is seen across the entire battlefields of Ukraine.
I gotta say, the French know how to use a machine gun. That front of that barrel was like red hot. Like they've been firing that thing nonstop.
Oh yeah, man, the French don't play. A lot of people give the French crap, but the French army is actually one of the best in the world as far as the training goes. And there they go, they're going in. And you can see that they're actually really taking a lot of the training, or at least a lot of the video footage that we've seen, the practical combat experience from the Ukrainian army, and pretty much doing the exact same to a T. Kind of giving us the idea, or not kind of giving us the idea, in fact, it's a clear idea, that the Ukrainian army is apparently the best in the world at the moment at trench warfare, because the French, from what I can see in this video, have not adapted and improved upon the... Oh, let's see. Wait a minute, hang on. It says we've detected video in your stream belonging to someone else. Are you kidding me? Is that happening again? Hang on, let me get off this clip. And let me go.
This happened another time since I was off?
No, remember, this happened before you got off. This happened like 3 months ago or something like that. But let's see what's going on, because now we gotta wait. So let me see. YouTube's going to go through its background check, and we'll see what's going on.
Man, it coincides with me coming on. Oh, what happened, man? They decided to get us now that Enforcer Matt's back. And also the Petraeus boy did us in as well.
Yeah, look at that. Isn't that crazy? I'm gonna have to wait for that. Let's see if you want to. Let me go check this. Let's see. So I don't know what they're looking at here. I'm sorry, everyone. We're going to have to stand by for a second and wait for this to get through, because apparently YouTube's doing their thing, and I got to wait to see if the stream is about to get blocked or not.
I'm not really sure if they ever know what they're looking at. Like, you know, anytime they flag it like that, like, it's like, are they really sending someone down, like a human, to review whatever they're looking at, or is it just like an algorithm sort of taking a look at it?
I don't really know. That's a good question, actually. But I have absolutely no idea. Who in the world would have had a problem with what we were playing, because a lot of it is being used under fair use. We're not even playing audio, and we're using it for commentary and news purposes, which does fall under fair use. So we're going to have to be waiting for them to get through that. I'm so sorry, everyone. It's really starting to break up our continuous news that we always run and get through, and hopefully y'all been enjoying it so far tonight. But still, I think we're going to be all right. They're still apparently looking at it, but we're just going to continue on with the news, because we don't have time to wait for that. The Lee Spring Army will not wait. We're going to press on and get through the rest of the news. Okay, apparently they're fine now. They went, okay, you're good. So,
hey, let's go.
YouTube came down and they said, you're hiding the copyright under the floorboards, aren't you? And then we went, no. And then they went, oh, okay, I'll see you around soon. But anyways,
YouTube might be slightly German of the old days.
But anyways, moving on from France and the training and doctrines that they're starting to implement in their armed forces based off of what's being learned in the Ukraine war, it's time for us to move on back towards Kharkiv, because while the French have learned valuable lessons from the Ukraine war, the Ukrainians are still having to continue to always adapt and overcome the brand new challenges that are being seen out there on the battlefields in Ukraine. And sometimes some soldiers are not so fortunate, and the lessons are learned just a little too late, and they end up being captured or having to surrender to the Russian army. 207 Ukrainian soldiers were released from Russian captivity today and handed over on the Kharkiv-Belgorod border. These are a few pictures of those soldiers once again being released from captivity out of Russian hands and making their way back into Ukraine. It's always great to hear about these kinds of prisoner exchanges, because these are people that are going to be able to return home to their families and their lives much like they had once more. And it's wonderful to know that so many Ukrainian prisoners of war are now no longer prisoners of war and will be able to live in their country again. It maybe even serve if they want to or if they choose to. But moving on from that little bit of news, it's more of a major bit of news. 207 Ukrainian soldiers is about an entire quarter of a battalion in modern terms. It's a major number of Ukrainian prisoners that has been released, and apparently I would take that as the Russians saying that the IL-76 that was shot down near Belgrade was filled with Ukrainian prisoners of war that they were planning on exchanging was a flat-out lie. I also forgot to give you all a little bit of follow-up on that, because I was watching that behind the scenes and wasn't really able to upload it a lot because, of course, those videos had dead bodies in them, so I can't show that stuff to y'all. But there was an actual body count made of all of the remains and body parts that were in that crash. And there were only about 5 or 6 people that could be accounted for that were, in fact, on the airplane. So there were no Ukrainian prisoners of war on that IL-76. The Russians just flat-out lied about that to try and make the Ukrainians look bad, although the lie was very see-through once the footage came out, and once the bodies were being recovered, there was not 65 of them, there was only 5. But moving on from that news, and on into our location unknowns, we also have some very interesting location unknowns. Very, very interesting ones. Moving into our first one, we apparently heard that a brand new anti-Putin Russian unit has been brought into the fold in the Ukrainian armed forces. This group is apparently called the Black Brigade. Or the Black Bridge. And I gotta say, The Black Brigade actually sounds pretty damn cool. That sounds like the Dark Knight or something like that. But beyond that, most of
Sounds
their
menacing.
yeah, it does. It sounds really menacing. But sadly, most of their faces were blurred. We can see that they're all wearing pretty standard Ukrainian kit. A personal armor system for ground troops helmet. PASGT. They're wearing the standard body armor kits, standard uniforms. We can see right here that this guy appears to have an early variant of the M4 carbine. This guy appears to have the same, really all of them have an early variant of the M4 carbine, and this guy here appears to have a PKP Pechnik machine gun. Outside of that, though, very interesting here that more Russians are joining the Ukrainian side on fighting against Putin and the regime that is currently fighting for the Russian Federation, and it appears that they're fighting hopefully for a more positive future for Russia. And that's, of course, a very commendable thing, especially considering that they're taking a great risk. But moving on from that news and into our next bit, we also got to see something that I have to say is glorious looking. The Badana SPG with a Tatra chassis.
Oh, man. That is so cool. Like, typically, I'm not the biggest fan of Tatra trucks, but this is a very cool looking one. Like, when you put a gun on the back of this thing, it looks tremendous.
Oh, dude, this thing is gorgeous looking. I mean, the Tatra chassis really makes this thing look space age nearly. I mean, this thing is just unbelievably good looking. And of course, it's just using your normal 155mm gun, really off of a Mista B, or a... why in the world did I say that like Mista B? I didn't even say that like a Mista B. It was Mista B, like it was some person, but that's really just the main gun off of a Mista S or a Mista B SPG. So they really just took the gun and put it onto the back of a trunk. But still, it does have advanced computer systems helping with the firing and accuracy of the artillery piece. And not only that, it is a lot more mobile and a lot more capable of the kind of shoot and scoot doctrine that artillery has to have in the modern day. Armor for artillery is not that important, and SPGs of the conventional type, like the M109 Paladin, the AS90, the 2S3 Akitsia, and the 2S1 Gazivka, are starting to show their weaknesses because that extra little bit of paper-thin armor actually adds a lot of weight to those vehicles and bogs them down speed-wise for the shoot and scoot kind of a doctrine, meaning that they're more vulnerable to enemy fire. These trucks, however, are lightened down to pretty much as light as they can possibly be while still completing their job of conducting artillery support. This means that you can drive this thing up to the field, elevate the gun to the proper range, fire a couple of rounds, and then within about 30 seconds after firing the final round, this truck has already moved from that firing position, and the Russians have absolutely no idea where it is. That is such an important thing in the modern world, in the modern battlefield, and we can see a picture here of this Badana firing its main gun. Overall, a great innovation of the battlefield, and once again showing that the Ukrainians are really trying to make sure that their artillery has the highest survivability rate imaginable. But moving on from that little bit of news and into our next bit, we also got to see something insane. A drone-mounted, and you heard that right, anti-tank guided missile launcher. This is the first of its kind that we've seen, at least in Ukraine. We have seen the British one from last year, but we haven't really heard much about it beyond that. This is a simple drone, well, a simple one, it's about the size of a small helicopter, but it's got a Kornets ATGM on top of it that can be operated by the crew. I think that's actually a Stugna, but the Stugna is like an automated Kornets. But this thing can fly off into the distance, and the drone operators can aim the ATGM on top of the drone, fire it, and hit a tank from miles away, which is just nuts. But here's the clip of this thing doing its thing, pretty much. It looks a little unstable.
Yeah, it's a little bit unstable, man. Like, how's it going to handle that recoil?
Oh, whoa, it actually handled it really good. Look at that. Wow, it didn't even move then. Yeah, not a flinch.
That's weird, too. It's like, wouldn't that recoil, like, tip it over? Like, especially with it taking off so wobbly. It's like, it didn't seem too stable, but all of a sudden it got rock solid. That's kind of cool.
That is really cool. And apparently it can fire from the ground, almost like a mounted position for the ATGM, or it can fire from a hovering position, kind of almost like a small attack helicopter. You know this thing is going to start becoming a favored kind of an anti-tank system by the Ukrainians.
It makes you wonder why the West can't come up with anything like this. Like, how come Ukraine is the first one to do it, and the West is, like, investing in these massive, like, complex weapon systems, but yet Ukraine is, like, creating the stuff that actually works and they can use it right now. The West can't keep up with that.
It's a good point. I really think that the reason why the West is so slow with weapons development and that kind of a in that kind of a degree is because we're not really being pressed with a war that we're fighting right now, and so we always want to make sure to spend as long as we need to and as much money as we need to refine the system to perfection. But the Ukrainians are of course fighting a war that requires weapons and better weapons right now, and so they will sometimes cut corners and things may not be exactly perfect, like that drone taking off and flying around. It didn't look exactly perfect, but still it's usable, and that's just what the Ukrainians need. They need something that's usable. They don't need something perfect that has years of development behind it and millions of dollars. They just need something quick, like a fast food meal in the military form. But still, they are really
the only company I've seen in the U.S. that comes close to creating like not really disposable, but sort of like lightweight, sort of inexpensive weapons like that is Anduril. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they create like those little small, like little systems, not the big ones like the U.S. is used to using, like the massive complex systems. But Ukraine is so much more agile with that, which is impressive because the U.S. isn't set up to do that. So, Ukraine's got an advantage on that front, and they could like capitalize that market if they keep going with the development.
I would certainly say so. I think they will be capitalizing on that market. And I think the Ukrainians, once the war ends, I think they're even going to be outdoing the Turks as far as cheap, affordable drones that are very effective go, because they are really starting to flesh out a drone for every occasion, a drone for every instance, both on the ground and in the air. But with that, we're moving on to our next little bit of news, where we got to see a picture of a Ukrainian anti-tank man. His face was covered with this weird thing. I don't know what the hell this is, but he's got a Javelin ATGM, and with the lighting from whatever that is in the sky, apparently the orb of God, I don't know what that is, but the lighting was really damn cool, and I was like, you know what, that's a picture worth showing. So pretty cool, pretty neat. And moving on from
It
that...
goes hard. Feel free to screen share.
Dude, someone needs to put the parental advisory explicit content little thing at the bottom or the top somewhere here, because that would fit perfectly with this.
Facts, man. Facts.
Facts. I'm spitting straight facts. And speaking of spitting, apparently the Russian army is spitting and sputtering their way through today because the casualties were very high. 1,090 Russian soldiers. Oh, what,
man, I missed out on so many Bobcats. They're up to 1452 now, and they just gained 4 today. What?
Man, they've been doing great.
Come on, man.
Man, they've been doing great. I mean, not only does the pick go hard, the Bobcat losses go hard. I'm telling you what. It's damn good, and it's great.
I love to see it. Love to see it.
We love to see it. We love to see it. Hey, you know what else we love to see? The losses in every other category as well. I mean, they've been incredible today. And I think we'll get a report from Miss Disa in the chat, because Miss Disa is usually our records keeper on artillery losses, but I believe today's artillery losses are reaching nearly record highs. But we'll go through everything else, and then we'll check back on that in a second. 1,090 Russian soldiers have been knocked out over the past 24 hours, along with 32 armored personnel carriers, 40 supply trucks, 10 main battle tanks, the 51 artillery pieces, 16 drones, 2 MLRSs, and the 4 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, today was an impressive day as far as the casualty reports go, and it's been something that I've got to say is truly incredible, and showing that the Ukrainians have been working very hard on making sure that their lines hold and that they stay strong. Credit for that kind of success usually goes to the soldiers in the field, but it's always important to remember that those soldiers in the field are led by, hopefully, good officers. And those good officers are then led by great generals. Some people have actually been hearing something, a little bit of a rumor that's been spreading around on the internet, that apparently a general that has really been in charge of the Ukrainian army since the beginning of the war, General Valery Zelensky, may have possibly been dismissed from his position. Many people are dispelling it as propaganda, and from what I understand, I have not seen any official confirmation from the Ukrainian government saying that he has been removed from his position. In fact, yesterday they came out with an opposite statement. But yet the story is still circling around greatly, and many people have rumors that although he may not be dismissed, he's probably going to be dismissed within a couple of days. A lot of people are thinking many different things on that. Some people are saying that this is a terrible decision because Zelensky has been a great commander, ensuring that the Ukrainian military has been having as much success as practically possible. Other people have said that General Zelensky is a terrible general and deserves to be removed from his position. And it appears, to be quite honest with y'all, many of y'all are very opinionated on this topic as well. It looks like it may actually be a little divisive. And Matthew, what have people been saying when you asked them the question?
All right, so moving into our first poll and question segment. It's been a super long time since I've said that, but super glad to be saying it again, I gotta say. The question is, sources say Zelensky is set to dismiss General Zelensky in the next few days, and what are your thoughts? 40% said, only time will tell on this one. 24% said that will cause a major rift. 23% said unsure, and 13% said that is an acceptable change. And on this one, I gotta say that I'm going to have a hard time believing it's going to go over smoothly because Zelensky has a lot of political backing inside of Ukraine. He is, of course, just the military general, and Zelensky is the commander-in-chief. But Zelensky has a following, and I don't think he intentionally tried to get that following. I think it sort of came naturally. So it's going to be a tough one because Zelensky is kind of having a bit of a political feud with Zelensky. If I'm being perfectly honest here, it's not totally about the strategy that's being used, although that is part of the equation. But mainly it's a political issue. So we'll have to see if his ousting, if that actually occurs. And right now we only have two sources saying that. So it's kind of preliminary. And there's been some rumors floating around about this for some time. So we'll have to see if they actually flesh themselves out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's a very divisive topic. And it looks like, actually, while most of y'all kind of went with the only time will tell option, decent amount of y'all kind of had an idea that this will actually cause a major change. And I've got to say that this is something that I would actually have to agree with the 25% of y'all, the quarter of y'all nearly, who said that this may cause a rift. General Valery Zelensky has been criticized in the past for some of the decisions that he's made, but the decisions that he has made, while they're not always the best ones in hindsight, as they always say, is 2020. And we're always able to look back on changes of doctrine and decision-making in the military and then say that was a bad idea. But at the time, Zelensky was working with the same things we were all working with. Offensives that may not be achieving the kind of results they needed, and how in the world are they going to go about getting the results they want? And he made the changes that he thought would bring about that kind of result. Zelensky has been a well-balanced commander, defensive and cautious in some instances, but aggressive and assertive in others on the front lines. And I have to say that that is something you rarely ever see in many generals. A balanced general is the best kind of general. One that is extremely cautious in every situation, usually misses great opportunities, and is able to pounce on them. Incredibly aggressive commanders sometimes take losses and end up fighting battles that didn't necessarily have to be fought at all. Zelensky is going right down the middle, and is what I would consider to be Ukraine's Norman Schwarzkopf. Kind of that down-the-middle commander that is able to seize opportunities when he sees it, and not try and seize opportunities where there isn't one. I think that the dismissal of General Valery Zelensky would probably be a very bad move by the Ukrainian government, and there has even been suggestions that the replacement for Valery Zelensky would actually be Budanov, the intelligence chief of Ukraine, which I believe is absolutely crazy to think about, because as many of y'all remember, Budanov has led this channel in particular, not, to deride him, but considering that apparently the facts they had back then even show that it was a wild goose chase to say something like this, they led this channel and many people around the world to believe that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was only a matter of 2 or 3 days away from blowing up, and then one day he said the plant is going to blow up within the next 24 hours and cause a nuclear holocaust across all of Europe that is going to kill about half of Ukraine and about a quarter of people in Poland, or at least cause some serious medical issues. When that never came true, and also just to give you all a little bit of perspective, this is nearly 8 months after that statement was made from Budanov, and it's never come true. It's never even come close to actually being true. That's something that I would have to say has thrown so much distrust in my mind of Budanov's actual statements, at least publicly, or even his analysis on his own privately, even if he believed that to be true, that he certainly probably would not be a good commander-in-chief for the Ukrainian armed forces, much like Zelensky has been. So I'd have to actually go with the 25%, the quarter of y'all, that said that y'all think that would cause a big rift, because to be honest with y'all, I would strongly disagree with the idea of dismissing Valery Zelensky. But that's only my opinion, and of course, many of y'all have many different opinions and takes on that, and that's what is really a great thing about this channel, is that so many of y'all have different ideas and opinions, and we're able to gather them all up and figure out what may be the best option out there. But not only do we have...
I gotta be honest with you, Enforcer, real quick while we're still on this poll. you know, at the same time, I realize why some people might be saying it's not a good idea to get rid of Zelensky. But also on the flip side, you do have to look at it from Zelensky's standpoint. Zelensky is in charge of the country, and Zelensky is gaining quite a bit of a following. And there isn't any signs that Zelensky is going to, you know, try to threaten or challenge Zelensky's power. But at the same time, in Ukraine, with the way the government is set up, I understand why Zelensky might be a little bit concerned or maybe a little bit worried that if he makes a misstep, that maybe a general or two might decide to do something or move on his government to try to take it over. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but at the same time, it is possible. But even at that, though, I'm not sure if preemptively getting rid of Zelensky is the answer, because even though he has had a couple of small blunders in his strategy on the front line, overall, he's been pretty satisfactory, in my opinion. You know, you can't expect perfection, and he's done the best he can. And overall, he's had success. But what do you think about that point?
I would agree with you. I think that he's had a lot of success, and of course, his record is not spotless. There have been a couple of failures, like, for example, the Zaporizhia offensive in the summer of 2023 could technically be considered a failure because it achieved neither its primary or secondary objectives. It was not able to take Tokmak, and it was not able to take Melitopol. Technically, that does fall under a defeat for Ukraine due to the failure to reach their actual objectives, either the primary or secondary ones. But at the same time, and what the hell is that? Freaking, what the hell, Epic Games. But anyways, I was like, what the hell is that? But anyways, something very important to remember about this entire deal is that nobody knew that that offensive was going to run into a brick wall. We didn't even know that it was going to run into a brick wall. It appeared that the Russian defenses in that area were lightly defended, and while it was a well-built-up defense, they had a limited number of forces. But once the Ukrainians pushed towards Rabotne, we saw that the Russians piled literal brigade after brigade to try and keep that part of the line stable. And over the course of the next 2 or 3 months during the offensive, they actually were able to slow the Ukrainians enough that they eventually gave up on the offensive. That would be a defeat, but at the same time, you can't blame that on Zelensky. Nobody knew. And on top of that, nobody knew that Western doctrines of rapid and highly mobile warfare, like the United States would emphasize in a thing like the Gulf War, would not work in a bogged down, static front line like the ones we saw in southern Ukraine. Zelensky, with very good and rational mindset, changed the doctrine from the Western rapidly mobile kind of warfare to the one that's more so grueling, a Soviet kind of a doctrine that requires heavy artillery support and slow, methodical armored advances through the open plains of the south. That was a very smart move on his end. It just still did not produce the results they were looking for. I don't think that's something that should be held against him because nobody knew. Lessons were learned, and Zelensky is probably the best person to conduct another offensive because he has now learned what worked and what didn't work during the southern offensive in Zaporizhia. Nobody's perfect, and I don't think he should be crucified and removed from his position because of that. That would be my opinion. But many of y'all have also thrown in some very interesting comments as well, and a lot of y'all have been throwing in super chats helping this channel to keep on running. And Matthew, what is the first one we have?
All right, so moving on to our first super chat of the night, we have a very generous $100 donation from Sinful J, who's a longtime channel legend, and it's good to see you once again, Sinful J. It has been quite a minute since I've seen you, and it's good to see you once again. And he says, welcome back, Enforcer Matt, and take a question from the live chat. And Sinful J, it is great to be back, and thank you so much for the huge welcome back, because seriously, I really do enjoy being back. I missed doing the stream over the entire 2 weeks I was gone. I did get some good rest, I must admit, but, you know, the rest only goes so far. I love doing the stream, and I'm very, very happy to be back, and very glad to see everyone once again. Everybody's been going crazy in the chat, and also, I haven't been able to respond to every single one I've seen, but thank you all once again for that. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the massive support as well, Sinful J. I gotta thank you for welcoming Enforcer Matt back. For a while there, Matthew was trying to focus on law school as much as he could. But nowadays, we are back at it again, Toad and Frog together again. And I gotta thank you so much once again. I gotta thank you so much once again for the incredible support, Sinful J, in helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, you know we are going to take a question from the chat just for you. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
And the question from the chat is going to go to Old Warrior, who says, did the GLSDB rockets arrive?
From what we understand, they did. It's just that we never really see them in use much because they kind of blend in with the normal artillery support. So The answer to that is yes, but we don't really ever see a lot of confirmation of their usage. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat well and pretty concisely from the information that we have. And with that, we are on to the next. But once again, before we move on, huge thanks to Sinful J for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep going. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to another channel legend, Kimberly Brokaw, who puts in a $100 donation. Another massive donation from Kimberly, and thank you very much for helping to keep the channel running. And she says, great job as usual, and take one from that chat.
And thank you for the massive support, Kimberly, and thank you so much for saying it's a great job. I never felt like we were doing an incredibly great job until we got referenced in the book by General Petraeus. By the way, if y'all want to get that book, I'm not trying to turn into a major news network now promoting people's books, but I will promote this one because we're in it. The book is called Conflict, and it was written by David Petraeus, as well as a professor that is a friend of his that he knows. It is about 450 pages long, approximately. We are near the very end of it on page 430 or so, and the entire book covers the history of modern warfare from 1945 to the present day. Technically, that makes it a history book, a modern war history book. And that's what's really blowing me away right now, Kimberly, is that technically, because of us, our name being mentioned in that book, we are technically now in the pages of history, at least in one big book out there. And that just blew me away to see. The fact that right now, Matthew and me are sitting in the basement of our parents' house. I've been doing this for 2 years, and I sit on a computer and I do what I feel like is pretty normal for me. It's just an average day of life for me. And somehow it was good enough that General Petraeus sat there and went, you know what, that's pretty good for me. He'll be put down as one of the most revolutionary ways that war is being seen for the world as far as Ukraine goes at this point in history. That blew me away because, to put that in a similar vein, many of y'all will know about the documentaries of the Vietnam War. And Vietnam, whenever they talk about how the public saw the war, they always say it was the first war to be televised. And they always talk about the news reporters from NBC and other networks that went over there and showed people on television what the war looked like. According to the book written by David Petraeus, or General Petraeus, we are that very same thing, but in the digital age, showing people what the war looks like on the ground in a way that really has never even been seen before, and is even beating out the age of TV from the times of Vietnam. That is something that
it's crazy. It's crazy to think like that. That fellow General Petraeus sat down with his laptop or his desktop or something and said, let me pull up this Enforcer channel on YouTube, and was sitting here watching the stream one night. That's really crazy to like even visualize that. Like, you don't even know who's watching. Like, seriously, anybody could be watching.
Really, anyone could be, and it just blew me away. I was like, there is no way. Because in my mind, I just run a channel, and we have the amazing Lee Spring Army watching, and that's it. I don't ever think that there's other people out there like General Petraeus that's watching the show. Because what's even crazier is that if I go into the Kindle book, and I read it, and I go, you know what? I'll show you. Let me go get the Kindle book, the Kindle Cloud Reader. Let me go there.
Oh, you bought the book?
Yeah, I bought the book. I mean, I got the digital copy of this thing. So here's the link, and it's actually still on this page. So here's the link that is put in the sources for us. Like when I click on the asterisk, it brings you here. So when I copy this, so Control C, and y'all saw me Control C right there, and then I click Control V right here, and I click Enter, it pulls up Google My Maps, and it brings you straight to the war map. Like, I'm not even kidding. So what this is, at the back of the book, is literally crediting our war map. And then to be able to get to that, because I got to show y'all this, because like this isn't just like a passive reference of, just kind of like stumbling on our channel and going, oh, neat, and then moving on. Let me show y'all how you get to that link to even be able to put that into your book. So let's take tonight's stream, for example, and you're watching it on a computer like this right here. You scroll down to the description, you have to click more, and then you have to scroll down here to the Day 707 Ukraine War map, click that, and then it pops up here. You have to do all of that to be able to get to this map. So it's not just a quick and easy process to put that in as a source in the back of a book. It's actually an involved thing where you had to click multiple things. The stream, you had to enlarge the description and then click on that link to be able to get it. So if anything, that really does back up that apparently General Petraeus at some point was watching our show very heavily, or may even still be watching it as we're talking right now. I have no idea. But it blows me away that someone at that high of a level is watching the channel. It really blows me away, and I'm unbelievably honored. And for one of the few times ever, I feel like we have truly done great work, because for the former commander of U.S. CENTCOM, and also the former director of the CIA as well, to sit there and credit us as a revolutionary source of news of the war in Ukraine in his book, we have to be doing something good. That just blew me away. You know, not to sit here and toot my own whistle, but I was blown away and so honored to know that we actually got mentioned in that book. But
Wait a minute. He was the former director of the CIA?
Yeah, he was actually the director. He was the 4th director of the CIA, and I believe he was the director for about a year and a half.
I need to talk to him about that check.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. Where the hell is the damn check? I mean, we're getting in the book. Where's
Oh,
the
boy.
check? You know, it's
Not the check for the book. The check for the CIA, man.
No,
we hadn't been paid.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, where is the check? We're so ingrained into the government apparatus that we can get mentioned as a source in the book, but we still can't get the check for doing our job. I mean, this is just sad, just pitiful. But anyways, I'm just kidding around. It's still great to know.
Yeah, it's just a joke, by the way.
It's just a prank.
joke.
It's just a prank. But nevertheless, thank you so much for the massive support, Kimberly, and thank you for saying it's a great job. Support like yours lets us know that it must be a great job, because you appreciate the channel enough that you're helping us to keep it alive. And so, let's take one from the chat in honor of Kimberly Brokaw Super Chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one from the chat goes to the old buzzard, who says, any news on F-16s, Gripens, or A-10s?
Oh, you old buzzard. I'm just playing
The old buzzard.
But to answer that, we have heard that the F-16 training is apparently running into some potholes, apparently, and they're starting to slow down the training to make sure that the Ukrainians are actually grasping what they're learning and they're not sending them into a death trap when they take off in Ukraine with an F-16. So from what we understand, the F-16s probably will not arrive here in the early part of this year. It may be a little bit towards the middle part of the year, even later this year. Very unfortunate to hear, but to be honest with you all, I've gotten a greater bit of info in the background, and it appears that the reason why the F-16s are not making it is because apparently Ukrainian pilots are continuously having problems actually passing the training program. And I'm not saying, you know, the West is making this exorbitantly difficult. It's in fact the normal kind of an F-16 pilot training school that they have them going through. But for some reason, the majority of these Ukrainian pilots are continuously failing the program. Some of them are even going through it a second time at this point. From what we've heard, out of the 30-something Ukrainian pilots in the program, only one of them has actually passed at this point. So that's why it keeps on being extended, because apparently they're running into some massive issues as far as training goes, either on the physical limitations of the Ukrainian pilots. Maybe some of them were transport pilots from Antonov 22s and they never had to be G tested before, something along those lines, or it may just be grasping a completely different kind of a system, because you have to remember that even the fighter pilots of Ukraine that can complete the physical aspects of being a fighter pilot easily are having to convert over from a MiG-29 or an Su-27, which operates completely differently than an F-16. You have to forget everything that you've learned and known for probably years or decades at this point and try and move into a completely new platform. That is very challenging, and apparently it's much more challenging than was thought at the outset. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat the best I can on the F-16s. We've heard some rumors that that Ukraine is still considering the purchase of Gripens, but we haven't heard a lot more about that at the moment. It's just kind of like a rumor floating around out there. And then as far as the A-10 Warthogs go, we have heard nothing on those. So right now, those are dead in the water and probably will never be sent over. But, you know, every once in a while, that'll come around the public sphere that an A-10 may be sent, but we never see official government talks from Ukraine or the United States about that matter. And so
I think that Ukraine would be much better off with the Gripens over the A-10s. Like, the A-10s obviously are our favorite. Everybody loves them, but the Gripens would be better suited for probably what they need them for.
Oh yeah, and on top of that, the Gripen is mechanically so simple compared to both the A-10 and the F-16 that the ground crew requirements for training are non-existent. You just need to have one experienced ground crew leader, and then every other ground crew member could be a conscript with minimal training, and that experienced crew leader could make sure to turn those Gripens around and have them ready to go. I believe they say within like an hour for most kinds of repairs and things need to be done by the ground crew, or even 30 minutes advanced some instances. So
Oh yeah, they're so solid. Like the landing gear is rock solid. The whole thing is built to be super rugged to take off from pretty rough runways. Like it's perfect for what they need.
yeah, I mean, this thing is truly incredible. What's really wild, what's crazy, and I'll get y'all down here to the dimensions. The Gripen is wildly small. I mean, it is a super small fighter. It's almost like in the modern world, I would say it's almost comparable to the size of something like a parasite fighter. It is so small. This thing has a length of 48 feet and a wingspan of 27 feet. I mean, this thing is tiny. Like, and let me go get an F-16 to compare this to, because once you hear like an F-16 versus a Gripen, you're like, dang, this thing is actually getting on down there in size. It's a bit of a smaller one. So the length of the F-16 is around 49 feet, and its wingspan is around 32 feet 8 inches, almost 33 feet. And while that's only a few feet difference in both length and wingspan, when you really see that side by side, the F-16 is actually pretty big compared to a Gripen. And because of that, the F-16 can carry a lot more ordnance, but also it's mechanically more complex than a Gripen. The Gripen is a very small, but also very simple aircraft to maintain and operate out there on the battlefield. And so that's why I think, to be quite honest with you all, in between an F-16 and a Gripen, it will probably just be so much easier to get a mass number of Gripens into the Ukrainian Air Force than it really would be to get F-16s in, really just for the logistical side of maintaining them and fielding them in this ongoing war. It's just going to be a lot easier for them for a Gripen, but the F-16s are what they're getting right now, and honestly, those are far more capable than a Gripen, but the maintenance side of things is going to be a nightmare compared to something like a Gripen. But with that, I hope that does address that live chat the best we can, and thank you so much once again, Kimberly, for supporting that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, and of course, throwing in a compliment that really inspires us to continue keeping this channel running. Kind words, it's not just support, but the kindness of the Lee Spring Army always makes us so happy to be here every single night and to continue to deliver the news to y'all. And words like that are as good as any super chat in making sure that we continue to have the morale and the spirit to keep covering this until the war ends. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the Ukraine war news.
All right, and this last one goes to Johnny Cool, who puts in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Johnny, for that support. He says, great to see the team back together. And my question is, are sidearms even used in this war? I got to say, for real quick, Johnny, it is good to see the team back together. Like the Enforcer said earlier, it's like Frogger and Toad, or whatever that book's called.
Toad and Frog together again.
Toad and Frog, yeah, not Toad and Frogger, but Toad and Frog together again. It's like the book is like here tonight, I got to say. Super glad to be back, and also I love doing the stream with the Enforcer as well, and also being here with y'all in the chat as well. It's so much fun. Like honestly, y'all don't know how much fun it was and how much I missed it. And it feels like I'm back into the spot that I belong. So I'm glad to be here. But Enforcer, what say you about Johnny's question?
I have to say, first off, some of y'all are like, wait a minute, wasn't it Bert and Ernie? Hey, yeah. Yeah, it was Bert and Ernie. You know, but the thing is, to give you all a little bit of background behind the joke, when we were kids growing up, there was this series of books that our parents loved to read to us, which was Toad and Frog. Many of y'all may know about that book. So when I say Toad and Frog together again, that's the exact reference right there to like the book cover and everything. And that's something that we actually say a lot behind the scenes, is Toad and Frog together again. That's what we say.
I remember that book now. Like now that I've seen the cover on the front, I remember it. It brings back like bad memories and stuff of having to read in elementary school.
Dude, I love this book, man. I loved it.
I don't know, man. That art, the cover art is a little bit like haunting for some reason. I don't know why. Why'd they draw the frogs like that?
Man, this frog looks like he will glass a effort. Like he ain't playing. He ain't hesitating. But anyways,
he's on that fine Minnesotan blow.
Dude, he's on that fine Peruvian blow. And my boy back here, he gonna get himself a glizzy. But beyond that,
Damn,
we're having way too much fun tonight. We're having way too much fun. But to answer that super chat from Johnny Cool. And I gotta admit, Johnny is cool. I mean, can't y'all agree? But I have to agree with you, Johnny. It is great to see the team back together. It's wonderful to know that Enforcer Matt is back. For a while there, I was getting really scared that me running this thing solo was going to be permanent. And of course, it is great to have Matthew back. It's wonderful to have him back on air. It's great to not do this alone. Many of y'all also agree, and I think it's wonderful. And also, sidearms aren't really used a lot in war. They're rarely ever used. even in prior wars, sidearms are kind of a little bit of a rough thing to use. And that's kind of funny because when you're here in the United States in the normal world outside the military, you usually see that sidearms like pistols are kind of the most common and really most widespread kind of a firearm out there as compared to rifles. But rifles really just provide so much more in every single situation than a pistol or a sidearm ever could. And so you'll usually see that soldiers are rarely ever issued pistols or sidearms, and if they have them, they are very rarely used then because they usually also have a rifle, and once again, the rifle is better in almost every single situation. Even in close quarters combat, rifles usually tend to be preferred and used. Like, for example, from the 3rd Brigade and the 93rd fighting in the trenches around Bakhmut, and the 47th Magura fighting on the northern flank of Avdiivka, you never see them using pistols. They're always using AKs. That's also for the ballistics of the rounds, because of course in this modern war, even the Russians, while their bulletproof vests are kind of hit and misses, a lot of them are wearing bulletproof vests, and if they're wearing a real one, usually you're guaranteed that really any kind of a bulletproof vest issued nowadays will be able to stop almost all pistol rounds. That is not the case with rifle rounds. A 7-in-6 round fired out of a 5.45x39 rifle, like a AK-74, will punch clean through a level 3 plate. Really, I believe it will punch through all level 3 plates. The only thing it can't punch through is a level 4 plate. So the rifle is still superior in that instance compared to a pistol. So we rarely ever see them getting used, Johnny. And I hope that answers your question very well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it is time for us to move on out of this question segment and on towards the front lines of Ukraine, up in the northeast near Tavolzhanka. We got to see that the Russians tried to conduct a little swing and a miss. On a CV-90, by the way, with a Lancet. And when you see the CV-90 there, the Russians are watching it. And the Russians went, and I saw the CV-90, and I took a swing. And in a second, they'll take the swing. I actually timed that wrong, but... And here we go. I took a swing, and I don't know when they're gonna miss. Okay, the camera's having a fine Peruvian blow. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on, this must be the Lancet coming in finally. And it's coming in, and... Wow, it missed. It missed outright. It was short and to the right.
A terrible combo. Terrible.
Terrible combo. Terrible combo. That's the end of the clip. But another pitiful example of the Russians trying to use their drones to very little to no effect. If that Lancet had actually hit the CV-90, it would have knocked it out, but the Russians suck so bad even at just flying a drone in, which can't be rocket science, that they missed the massive APC right in front of them. Moving on from that, though, towards Yehidny, we got to see some Ukrainians riding a BMP-2 into snow. We're going to be muting that, but there they go, dashing through the snow in the one-horse open sleigh. This is more of like a 1 horsepower open sleigh, but whatever. We can see him.
Like on the snow is like right there on the road. It's nowhere else but like right there. Oh, never mind. It's in the forest. Forget it.
Yeah, it's snow.
It's right there. The snow's everywhere.
It's freaking snow. But anyways, moving on from this little clip. There hasn't been a lot going on in the northeastern area. It's just kind of like a sporadic clip here and there. But down near the area of Krasnoyarsk, we got to see that the Ukrainians are apparently hitting Russians with the Rubik's Cube. You think I'm lying, but wait until you see this drone. The Scooby-Doo van got hit. You can see where the drone actually punctured the roof. Like, zoink Scoob, I think this thing's got a hole. Reggie. Oh.
Let's see, based on where the mystery gang or whatever they used to be called, where they sat in the van, that would have hit. Yeah, Shaggy just got zooted out here.
Like, zoink Scoob, I think my head is gone. Reggie. Decapitation.
Raggy. Dog food.
Dude,
that got dark.
Dude, Scooby said, finally, some good effing food. Anyways, there's the drone that did the damage. It's a freaking Rubik's Cube of a drone. I've never seen one like this before.
Looks 3D printed almost.
I think it was. It just looks so simple, but it's literally square. Like, it's a Rubik's Cube drone. And we can see that they actually put an AK-74 under it for drip factor. But beyond that, that's a wonky looking drone, and I can't believe that it did that kind of damage punching through the roof of that thing. But hey, I guess Rubik's Cubes are actually pretty effective. They said be there or be square, and this drone operator said, I'm going to be square. But anyways, moving on from that, and a little bit further down the lines into the area of Bakhmut, in the southern flank, we got to see, of course, really quickly, let me say this. There hasn't been a lot of frontline movement in Bakhmut over the past 24 hours, so there's really no point in a frontline analysis here tonight, but in the southern flank near Klishkivka, we did get to see that a Ukrainian drone was able to lead a Russian prisoner into captivity as a prisoner. Okay, well, that's getting muted. And we see him dropping an F1 grenade. Call that grenade Max Verstappen because it's quickly dispatching Russians. But when you see that Russian there, he's crawled out of the hole and he's going, stop! He literally threw up like the stop sign. He's like, stop! No more. I'm tired of this. I don't even get paid.
Is that technically a surrender, or is that like a... Oh, I guess it is.
Yeah, but he's being led right now to a Ukrainian position to surrender by the drone.
That's quite nice of them.
Yeah, that was actually pretty, really incredibly kind of the Ukrainians. They were like, oh, okay, we'll stop. And there are the Ukrainians right there, taking him prisoner.
I've never seen like a drone escort for surrender before. That's kind of new.
Yeah, but that's actually pretty damn nice when you think about it. I mean, like, that guy literally just gave up. And instead of the Ukrainians taking him on out, because, who knows, he may feign a surrender and then just run away. Instead, they actually just got him straight into being surrendered. The guy was actually pretty freaking smart for doing that. And the Ukrainians were very, actually overly kind, really, in doing this. Because we have seen clips before where the Russians have attempted to surrender like that, but they only feign it until there's a good moment to run away from the drone, and then they go running off into the distance, never to be seen again, and to live to fight another day. This didn't happen in this clip, which it was really a good thing on all sides. The Ukrainians ended up getting a prisoner of war. That Russian doesn't have to fight the war anymore. Everyone ended up getting what they wanted. But moving on down into Avdiivka, the Russians are certainly not getting what they want down here. There has been, from what I understand, no major frontline advances within Avdiivka over the past 24 hours. I'm going to have to make sure to double check that. And let's double check it. Past 24 hours. Literally no changes. So we are absolutely correct in saying the Russians are furious and pissed down here because they are not moving an inch. And the Ukrainians are once again effecting a great defensive of the city. In our first clip, we got to see that the Ukrainians were able to destroy one of Russia's newest T-90Ms. And this, of course, was done by the Omega unit. We can see the drone coming on in. And here it goes, right towards the rear of the turret of the T-90M. And we see that this T-90M actually has a cope cage on top of it as well. It did not help, because the T-90M ended up getting hit very severely on the turret, most likely knocking it out. The clip ends there, letting us see that even though the Russians can start to pump out T-90Ms, which we're starting to see them do a lot more than there was at the beginning of the war, it still will not save them. Moving on from that and into Avdiivka, we also got to see that the Ukrainian tank decided to roll up on the Russian defenders here within this little finger, right there, and just start blasting them at point-blank range, because, funnily enough, y'all wouldn't believe it, the Russian infantry in this part of Avdiivka do not have any anti-tank weapons from what we know. They're not being issued them, or they're not in the supply store, so they're just moving up with rifles and praying that Ukrainian armor does not drive right up onto them and start blasting them. And believe it or not, that's literally what just happened today. We can see some soldiers moving around here behind the building. And we can now see some smoke coming up from the street where that Ukrainian tank is literally blowing the building away from its foundations. We can see some Ukrainian soldiers here moving around on the other side of the street as this Ukrainian tank takes its time obliterating this Russian defensive position. Can we get a second shot? Please, sir, can I have some more? And the tank obliged and blew up another house. What impressive. Impressive. And maybe, just maybe, through those efforts, the Ukrainians will be able to destroy the finger. But we don't know, because the finger has actually existed for a pretty good while now, about a week and a half. So I have a feeling it will continue to exist, although the casualty rate for Russian forces within the finger is probably going to be quite high. Moving on from that and out of Avdiivka, it's time for us to get even a little bit further down towards Marinka, because I have a clip that is very rare on this channel. It is a clip of the Russians conducting an offensive, and it was Mad Max style. I'll show y'all the clip, because it's just bizarre to see what they call an armored personnel carrier in the 155th Separate Guards Infantry Brigade of the Pacific Fleet. A very long name, but that's actually the name of the unit. Matthew, does this look like the back of a barn to you?
Looks like a mishmash of like industrial parts, like steel plates and crap. Like it doesn't look like it's proper.
This is a janked up MTLB.
Oh, sure.
This is a ghettoed MTLB. Like it's just like I've never seen anything this bad. This thing came straight out of the hood. But and listen to it while it moves. It sounds like it's dying. Like ugh. It's ew. Here's the front of it. And here they go. Ukrainians are already
These are
bringing
Russians?
Yeah, these are the Russians. I mean, you see the Ukrainians are already hammering them with artillery. They're not really doing a lot of firing. Now they finally are. Did you see that spray? This man fired into space. He's trying to go for the International Space Station with that. Watch. When he starts firing, the gun's almost pointing straight up into the sky. Like, he didn't hit squat.
Где у них опорник, братан, ты видишь? Давай, давай, за батыром, пацан.
We heard the Ukrainians dropping some clusters on him.
Встань! Иди сюда, братан. Давай, Аякс, помогай ему, помогай.
I get the strange sense these Russian guys aren't exactly confident in their skills.
I think they are not confident at all. If you notice, there's not a lot of firing that they're doing here. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of organization, and in their voices you can hear fear. It sounds like all of them were in the same instance. It seems like this unit immediately disintegrated under the pressure of the fight once they arrived on the front line, and so they kind of just hunkered down and waited for the Ukrainian artillery to do its work against them, and hopefully the ones who survive are able to retreat. That's what it seems like the battle turned into. So certainly not a winning one on their end. But moving on from that little bit of news in Marinka and all the way down to the southern front near Huilopol, we got to see an interview with the 82nd Air Mobile Brigades or Air Assault Brigades Challenger 2 crews. This was a very interesting clip. Sadly, I'm going to have to mute the audio, though. But we can see the red lights illuminating the turret of this Challenger 2 as it starts to conduct fire support missions in the area. We heard their intercepted radio contacts. Vehicle movement spotted. What vehicle? Don't know. Huge and loud.
That's very specific.
The first mission is always the scariest. Anyone will say the same, whether infantry or a tank man. And then human gets used to anything. Man, why in the world did that sound like a caveman line? Grug get used to things. It's like, oh, okay. But this is the tank that the Russians said was big and loud. The Challenger 2. The main battle tank of the United Kingdom.
Hey, somebody's getting gunned down by that thing. You see that thing turning with that?
Dude, that's
aiming right at those guys.
That's what folks in Essex call a shooting. That's a drive-by shooting. But
Oi, bruv, can you point that turret away from my face?
Oh, you got a turret pointing license for that. But anyways,
Oh, hello there.
oh, hello there. Oh, hello there. All right,
You're pulling it up. I hear you clicking.
hang on. Hang on. This isn't going as smoothly as I thought it would. Oh, hello there. Would you like
Hello
a
there.
Ah, it's Marmot
Would you like
time.
some rock?
Would you like some rock? Is it Minnesotan rock? Oh yeah, Governor, it's the finest. Would you like a plum?
You know, I've never noticed these marmots ever selling hot dogs, though. Like, they sell rock and plum, but no hot dog.
Sorry, they haven't hit that low. They haven't dropped that low yet.
I'm telling you.
Oh man, I'm telling you. But it's a marmot, and it's marmot time, baby. Y'all know it. But sadly, the marmot is interrupting this interesting video about the Challenger 2. So we're going to get back to this video. I remember that upon returning, we got out completely soaked. Commander forbid removing concealment. So much adrenaline, so we were all sweaty. There was AC, but it did not help. Compared to training, a real mission is something else. Could take clothes off and put them in the dryer. In terms of missions, we mainly worked against tree lines. Russian trenches within tree lines is what they're saying. No vehicles yet. Tree lines. The infantry didn't complain. They said we did a really good job. There was an anti-armor high-explosive shell. The enemy had full concrete dug-in positions. This one had no problems with them. meaning the shell blew clean through the concrete bunker. Lads walked around positions we fired at. It was great. Apparently, this guy's also picking up British terminology now. Oh, the lads just wandered around the positions. It's wonderful. And accurate? Yeah, we fired from distances of like 2.6, 2.8 kilometers. About like 2.2 miles. From close positions adjusted with drones. We were in the tree line, and a drone adjusted our fire, not our far. That's really redneck. But in training, if you do the calculations correctly, you hit exactly where you're aiming. Good armor, yeah. Yeah, real good armor. Cross-country ability is difficult. For our ground, it's pretty heavy. And the Challenger really is heavy. It's a 62-ton tank. So it's one of the heaviest out there in the Western world at the moment. Just like all NATO vehicles, though, and that is accurate too. We do damage so that infantry can advance with raised heads, not crouching. If a tank man says he's scared, then what about infantry? If the infantry needs to go where a tank man is afraid to go, this is wrong. Actually, a little bit of a disagreement there. That's actually right. The infantry should be scared to go places that tanks are scared to go, because usually if a tank's scared to go somewhere, it will probably end up getting destroyed a lot worse and a lot more quickly than the infantry will end up being destroyed. But that he's a guy on the battlefield. He knows a lot more than me. If they got told on radio, tank will work and then you clear, then certainly their morale improves and it's not as scary.
Sounds like it checks out.
Last time we were attached to bloop unit. Shit unit.
Well, really, what they bleep out with 4 letters that was like that could have fit and made sense.
Yeah, man, we got attached to the shit unit. But anyways, when they found we were coming, they shit themselves. But even the wounded lads, knowing a tank will help, they kept going forward. They kept pressing on. I think that tank and artillery support is key for the infantry, and it really is. Not just for morale reasons, but also for tactical reasons on like a squad-on-squad, company-on-company level fight. Infantry, any kind of heavy, high explosive support, whether it be HE shells from a tank or HE shells from the artillery, it is so important and gives a massive upper hand advantage to the infantry that are being supported. It's very pleasing when you return from a mission to rest, and you hear infantry communicating on radio or in between each other how the tank men did a great job firing and then cleared up without any losses. This is very nice to hear. It gives some additional motivation. Would like to thank the British for such an honor, for providing such a vehicle. We only had brief experience on Soviet tanks. But when we came to Britain to train on these tanks, it was a night and day difference.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Love to hear it.
Oh man, the British are repping the set, and they really are. The Challenger 2 is one of the best tanks in the Western world, and it's great to hear that the 82nd Air Assault Brigade is a hardcore believer in the might and power of the Challenger 2. And speaking of which,
although I gotta tell you, I'm no expert on tanks or anything. I've never been in these tanks physically, but I could tell you for a fact that between a Soviet tank and a British tank, there's got to be a massive, like a world difference between those two tanks, like just by their nature.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, like when talking about the abilities of a Challenger versus a T-62 or a T-72 or even a T-80. The Challenger 2 is like a Tiger 1 tank in World War II going up against T-34s, early war T-34s. It is a turkey shoot. We've never seen a Challenger actually go up against a Russian main battle tank yet, but considering that the Bradleys tore apart a T-90M, you missed that, didn't you, Matthew? The Bradleys ripping apart a T-90M near Stepove?
I think I might have caught part of that, but not the whole thing.
Yeah, those things shredded a T-90M on their own. And the T-90M is the most advanced and most armored main battle tank the Russians have today, to date, on the battlefield. And the M3 Bradleys that we provided to Ukraine are from 1980s vintage. And just 2 of those things went up against the T-90M, and they mopped the floor against it. Neither of them were lost, neither of them were damaged, and the T-90M was destroyed. Of course, though, some people are going to say the T-90M was disabled, the crew bailed, and then a drone came and destroyed it later. But if it wasn't for the Bradleys engaging and knocking out that T-90M, it would have never been destroyed by a drone later. So going off of that, and knowing that a Bradley can beat Russia's best main battle tank, it would be very clear to me that a Challenger 2 will not even have an opposition from a Russian main battle tank. It will destroy it very easily. But something that I have to say, Matthew, is not just quality. As far as the tanks go, the infantry has to maintain quality. And one of the best ways, Matthew, to maintain quality in the infantry is to provide good, succulent Chinese meals. What are the challenges? Eating a meal, a succulent Chinese meal. And we can see some Ukrainians getting a succulent Chinese meal near the area of Verbove today. Here's the clip.
Hey. Oh, hello there.
That's Matthew's narrating like it's a dub. Hello there. Could you have a plum? And they all look happy, man, because they're getting that good food. And it's piping hot. You see it's steaming. You know, that's some good stuff right there, man. Especially when you're starving. That's got to be the best meal there is.
Man, when they say that the morale goes high when they get good food. Wait a minute, this is actually a Chinese meal. Is that fried rice?
I swear that looks like fried rice, man. I'm not lying. That might be fried rice.
Or it could be like dirty rice or something. But like you can see the morale going up as they're like getting the food and stuff like that. Like they're just getting so excited over the food. I don't blame them too, because I'd be starving. You know, I'd want the food bad. Now you know what's so interesting about that, Matthew, is that there is actually science behind hot foods and improving morale in the military. There was research done as far back as World War I, where one unit was deprived of hot meals during the winter of 1917, and another unit was provided consistently hot meals throughout the winter of 1917, and they found out that the cases of shell shock were directly correlated and rapidly increased when there was a lack of hot food, because the morale was so low that it was a lot easier for soldiers to mentally break under the strain of frontline fighting and frontline conditions. Hot food is something that many nations have tried to figure out how to implement into their armed forces, really even if there is a field kitchen or not. And that's why a lot of modern US and Western MREs always come with that little heat pack that you're able to drop the food into, and it pretty much heats it up right there on the spot without the need of a field kitchen or some kind of a stove. It allows for these soldiers, even in the most tough of conditions, completely deprived of a real field kitchen and real food, to be able to have a hot meal, which does so much for morale. It is truly one of the biggest things you can do to have a morale booster. But it's a really cool history about how hot food has had a big impact on wars throughout all of history, really. That's interesting. Like I can believe it too, because if you give me hot food versus something cold, I'm much happier with the hot food, so that makes sense.
Oh yeah, like cold food sucks. Hot food, good food. But moving on from the southern, well, actually, sorry, not moving on from the southern front, near the town of Novomykhailivka, sorry, we got to see a MiG-29 firing an AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missile towards the area of Melitopol and Tokmak. We actually got to see him firing 2 of them. There goes the first one. And there was a second one, I believe, in this clip. No, oddly enough, I swore I saw 2. But there he goes. He's turning off. He's starting to hit the deck and popping his flares probably here in a second. Not popping flares. That's interesting. Huh. But he's starting to get a little bit low. You can see that he's starting to drop altitude gradually. And there they go. That's the end of the clip, but showing a little bit of the Ukrainian Air Force in action. One of the rare moments that we got to see an AGM-88 being fired. Moving on from that and down into the area of Krenki, activity from the Ukrainian Armed Forces in Krenki has actually been elevated today. We got to see near Casualty Lahri some of Ukraine's southern defenses. That's a Mars.
Hey.
That's a HIMARS.
Lovely.
And there goes a BM-21 Grad, a Russian Russian multiple launch rocket system, or an MLRS as they're called. or you can call it a rocket launcher. Really, either one. It kind of all works. But we can see the Grad sitting there and is about to get blasted by a smart round, an airburst round right over the BM-21, sending a whole bunch of shrapnel into the vehicle, and hopefully we'll see an ammo burn here in a second.
They backed it up into the like row of dead trees like that was going to hide it.
It doesn't look like it caught on fire, though. It may be lacking ammo. Or they may hit it a second time here. Apparently, it's not destroyed, it's just damaged. Here's another Grad, however. This one actually has a cope cage above the rocket launcher. They're backing it up into the woods. Same strategy. The woods will hide. The woods do protect. But sadly, they don't. Another smart round came on top of that BM-21. And this one looks like it's billowing, and it looks like it actually had ammo in it that ended up catching on fire.
The Ukrainians are trying to improve Russian morale. They're delivering hot food, but the food's being made inside the MRE can, the vehicle itself.
Man, call these Russian Grads Little Caesars because their crew members are hot and ready. But moving on from that and out of that little clip, it's time for us to move on down to the area of Chelberta, where we got to see some Russians trying to flee.
В настоящее время докладываю, блядь. На мосту
They're going fast. You can
уебал
hear
камикадзе.
that.
Осуществляю эвакуацию, блядь, с соседними подразделениями. Вот эвакуируем раненого друга. Откуда ты будешь? Сибуди. Красавчик вообще. Ну тебе немножко осталось потерпеть совсем.
Dude, that's what some guy says when he's drunk as hell in the nightclub and he sees a nice looking woman. He goes, "Zabooty." This man saying in the back of this
Маленькая
car.
пауза. Бля, просто пацанам, блядь, скажешь потом, они не поедут. Вот КамАЗ горит.
Uh-oh.
Ой, блядь, как горит.
Trouble on the highway. It looks like the Ukrainian ended up taking out some of their friends.
Давай, братуле, опа! Русские не сдаются, бля.
Oh, it looks like they just got hacked. All right.
Whoa! What the
I don't know.
BCE? Is that like the time, like before Christ?
That's before Common Era, or as it would be said, Ukrainian, or something like that. But what is the rest of it? That's just it? Huh.
Must be a show.
All right, well,
Never seen it though.
I've never seen that, and it looks like those Russians got had. And in that guy in the back of the truck, his last words were "Zabooty," and get it, bud. But anyways, moving on from that and towards Zelensky, we got to see the Ukrainians making fun of a Russian that got hit by a drone attack, and he freaked out and started crawling away. They called him the Ruski Spider-Man. He goes walking into this plaza here, and he gets hit by some kind of a drone munition, which is about to blow up right there. And so the guy freaks out, and he's crawling across the ground, getting out of there. Look at him. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web, and he flies. Catches thieves, just like flies. Look out.
That dude's making ground though. I've never seen anybody crawl like that.
Dude, that's one of those clips where they go, a normal human man couldn't have made footsteps that long and moved that quickly. This must be Bigfoot. You know, this is like that, but this must be Spider-Man, because this man really was moving, man. Like, he was gone. Like, how long did it take him to get from one end to the other? So let's count it. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 seconds.
That
5
dude.
seconds to crawl that far.
That dude is crawling like a dog after he gets in trouble and gets a spanking or something like that. He'll creep along the ground so low, like it's like literally like just scooting and crawling at the same time.
Dude, this man is like the cartoon characters who like pull up their pants and their legs get like 2 times longer and they're like speed moving at that point. But he's crawling doing it. Look at that. I have never seen anyone taking strides that long crawling. I mean, this man is putting his soul into this crawl. Yee. Well, that's a freaky show, but beyond that, the Ukrainians are holding Krinky, and they're hopefully going to be working on trying to push out a Krinky here in the future, although it appears that it may be a little difficult due to supply concerns. But moving on from those clips in the area of Krinky, it's time for us to move on to Kyiv to cover... I don't know why I made that the thing is supposed to be that one. But it's time for us to move on to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 707 of the war. And so, without further ado,
Speech.
here is the peach. You were very enthusiastic about that. You're like, speech! Speech!
It's been a long time, man. I want to hear the speech. It's only 3 minutes long, though. What the hell?
3 minutes and 30 seconds. I hope that they become longer. But here is the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Коротко про цей день. Найперше – обмін, звичайно. Повернули наших людей, ще 207, загалом більше 3000 хлопців, які воювали і в Маріуполі, і на інших напрямках, на Донеччині, Харківщині, Запоріжжі. Різні звання у хлопців, різний досвід, всі однаково важливі для України. І так само звільнимо усіх наших людей, і це обов'язок. Ми шукаємо кожного і кожну військових та цивільних. Перевіряємо всі можливості. І наша команда щодо цього працює без будь-яких перерв. Друге. Готуємось до засідання Європейської ради на рівні лідерів. Це завтрашній день. Важливою буде і вдячність усім нашим партнерам, і подальша консолідація, щоб пройти цей рік саме так. Так, як потрібно Україні та усій нашій Європі. Визначимо пріоритети. І третє. На що обов'язково треба звертати увагу усім щоночі, щодня. Чергові російські терористичні атаки, ракети і дрони. Значну частину ми збиваємо. Поки що є й багато влучань. Але вже 31 січня принципово інша, ніж минулою зимою, енергетична ситуація. Систему збережено. Забезпечуємо українців енергією, забезпечуємо та постійно посилюємо захист енергетичних об'єктів, зміцнюємо наш повітряний щит. Ще треба багато пройти цією зимою, і російські терористичні атаки ще будуть, і росіяни будуть намагатись зламати наш захист. Усвідомлюємо загрозу і дякуємо кожному, хто захищає державу, хто щоночі, щодня на бойових чергуваннях. Українські повітряні сили, усі наші зенітники, мобільні вогневі групи, кожен розрахунок ППО і кожен воїн у силах оборони, і кожен працівник енергетичної сфери, усіх підприємств, які працюють, усіх мереж, які зберігаємо та відновлюємо. Це велика робота багатьох людей. Такий захист держави, такий захист життя нашого народу – це загальна справа. В обороні, в активних діях, у захисті життєво важливих систем усе залежить, звичайно, від фаховості та хоробрості конкретних людей. Якби у України не було таких людей, наша держава не змогла би вистояти. Але завдяки таким людям, завдяки нашому такому народу, Україна стоїть, Україна захищається, Україна досягає власних цілей у війні. Я дякую усім, хто воює та працює заради держави, усім, хто допомагає і хто додає свої інтереси у єдність із усіма іншими в Україні. Успішний захист держави – це завжди загальна справа. І українці вміють долати складнощі. Усе подолаємо, як вже багато подолали. Завдяки усвідомленню спільних інтересів, державних інтересів. Я дякую усім, хто в Україні та з Україною, хто вірить, б'ється та здобуває результат для нашого народу. Слава Україні!
And
Heroam Slava.
And with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 707 of the war. And it's time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream. Of course, we'll be addressing some of the questions that we've been asking y'all in between the last question segment and this one. And not only that, we'll get to address all the folks and thank y'all for throwing in super chats, questions, and sponsoring live chats, and also get to live chats that have been thrown in throughout the stream tonight as well. But I actually saw something that someone asked in the chat, and something that I talked about to great length last night, and I can speak on my own personal end. It'll be up to Matthew whether he gives an answer to that or not. But one of our viewers, Fernando Vargas, who's been around forever, asked about law school, and asked, the enforcer mentioned leaving law school last night. Did you guys both decide to leave? I'm not going to speak on Matthew's end. I'll let him decide if he wants to answer or not, but I will be honest with y'all because I try and be as transparent with all of y'all as possible, even if it's on my personal life, and sometimes it delves a little bit more into the realm of things that are private matters than public matters, but I'll be honest with y'all, I actually officially withdrew from law school today. I decided that law school necessarily isn't going to be the right path for me going forward in the future, and there are other ways to achieve those final goals of mine that don't necessarily require me to get a legal degree. It's something that has been on our minds for a very long time, much like I was saying last night, especially on my mind. It's been on my mind really ever since the beginning of December, really even before the last semester even ended, whether law school and the law would be a thing for me, and whether it would be something that I should pursue, or should I try and pursue other things that I'm naturally good at. And I've decided today, and it's now in motion and there's no reversing it, to move on doing something that I know I'm very happy doing and have a great passion for, which is what we're doing right here. I hope that everyone understands why we made the decision, because I remember I went into great length with all of you last night trying to explain all the reasons why we would want to why I would want to continue, why I probably wouldn't want to continue, but the decision has now been made. Law school is no longer going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing of the past, and I'm going to move forward, and regardless of what I do, it will be good. I'll, of course, let Matthew speak in a moment if he wants to speak, but on my end, it's something that I know will be perfectly fine. It does not mean that it is the end of the world for me, because one thing that I've learned right now, and to be quite honest with y'all, it was a massive boost in confidence last night to know that the channel got mentioned by a general. Not only that, we've been talked about by massive publications in Ukraine, like the Kyiv Post as being one of the top 10 news sources on the Ukraine war. And this is something that I've been putting a lot of effort into, but this is something that I've always felt was kind of just a little bit of a background thing. There was always bigger things out there like law school and like undergrad and trying to get that history degree. There was always bigger things out there in my mind, and this was something I put massive effort into, but I never felt like I was doing my best in. And somehow we've ended up doing good enough that we have been accredited by major organizations and major historical figures for what we've done. And that lets me know that regardless what I do, regardless where I go, I will always put my best efforts apparently into it, and it will shine through. And that's something that I know will be the case. And I know that no matter what, this channel will continue on until the war ends. And I'll make sure that in between then and now, either this channel will continue on doing amazing things, not just with Ukraine, but other things around the world, or I'll move on to doing even better and greater things, hopefully, and possibly, and very hopefully so, in the benefit of this nation. And so, I'm with that out of the way and me addressing it, Matthew, would you like to address your end, or would you like to hold that for a little later?
And yes, I'm going to go ahead and address my end as well. And I can also tell you all that also this morning I decided to withdraw my I guess you could say admission to law school, or my studentship there. I decided basically about a few weeks back that my heart was really not in it. I was going there every day, and I was getting to the point where I was having a hard time even getting out of bed to go, to be perfectly honest. And I didn't really see a future in it. And I was thinking that for a long time, and I finally decided to pull the trigger and follow my gut. And I think that'll lead me to a much better career and place than it would have otherwise, because I didn't feel like I was going down the path that was right for me. And it was a tough decision, but I think it'll ultimately be the right one. And I may go deeper into it later on, but for right now, I'm still finalizing the withdrawal process right as we speak. So I might wait to get into the rest of it later on. But I'm kind of with the enforcer. My heart just wasn't in it. And whatever I do, I think it'll be better than that, because, you know, the legal profession is not exactly what you'd call a happy profession, or something that you go into to find, I guess, satisfaction or enjoyment. There is satisfaction in it to a degree, but there's also a lot of strife and a lot of suffering on the side of the people you're representing, unfortunately, on that side, and then also on the side of the lawyer themselves, because they're under so much pressure. And I'm not sure if I want that for my life, but maybe one day I'll reconsider. But for right now, I'm going to have to put that on the back burner and move on to other ventures. But that's just me. But it sounds like the enforcer's in the same boat pretty much.
Pretty much in the exact same boat. And there's a whole lot of other things that went on in the background in our decision making. And many of y'all know everything that I was talking about last night, of course, including our own very dad, who's been in the profession for 30 years and is starting to tell us after 30 years looking back, it may have not all been as worth it as he thought it was. You know, many things were missed out that he wasn't able to do because he was an attorney, and he was constantly working 100 to 120 hours a week and very seldom had time for his own family and things like that. And it's always stuff like that that makes you think, while being an attorney would be great, and going out there and having such a illustrious and honored title. It's a doctor and a lawyer. That's the two big things everyone always wants to become in life. It may not be worth it. And there may be greater things that lead to much more happiness and maybe even better things than doing that. And that's something that at this point I strongly believe in. And especially, and especially when dealing with some things that were talked about, not just on our end, stuff that we were kind of observing, Matthew and me, but also our dad has told us about, and we're kind of having to deal with on a microscopic level right now. Things like that, and I'm sure Matthew is kind of getting what I'm hinting to, make you really know that that is probably not the realm of a profession or a career you'd really want to go into. But that may be something we address maybe down the road, maybe a few weeks from now, when that situation is settled and done with. But with that, it is time for us to move on into a big question. We've had many questions that we posed to y'all tonight, and we're going to, of course, be seeing what y'all think. And Matthew, what kind of questions have you been asking of the folks?
All right, so we have 2 poll questions to go over, and our first one says, some are concerned that the USA may withdraw from NATO in the next 5 years, and what are your thoughts? 77% said that would devastate the alliance, 12% said unsure, another 7% said it would have a mild effect, and 5% said that would have no real effect. And in my opinion, I'm going to be with the 7% that said it would have a mild effect, actually, because even though the USA would not be in the alliance at that point, which in my opinion is very unlikely that'll ever happen, but it is being tossed around by a few people. So just examining that possibility, I don't think even if the USA was not in the NATO alliance, that we would still not come to the aid of Europe. Under pretty much every circumstance, we're always going to be there for Europe, even if we're in or out of the alliance. We're not going to let Europe get steamrolled because that would be devastating to our interests as well, whether or not we're there for the NATO alliance or not. But it's just really a political talking point because we're really not backing out of NATO. That would be insane. Nobody's going to allow that to happen. And also, I think there's safeguards in place to prevent that from happening anyway. I think it requires congressional approval, doesn't it?
I believe so.
Something like that. But I doubt we're ever getting out of it. Even if we did, it really wouldn't affect anything to a huge degree, in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say we're certainly not withdrawing from the NATO alliance. Whatever is being said about that is absolutely ludicrous. The NATO alliance is our alliance. Like, I don't know why some people here in the United States don't understand that. We created NATO, so that way we could get all of the countries that were aligned to Western interests and our interests would be under the same umbrella defense organization in Europe. That was the whole point we made the thing, and that's why it exists today. So that would be senseless to step out of the very organization that we created. And on top of that, it would be severely compromising our sphere of influence in the Western world. The United States is, regardless whether people want to say that, at the end of the day or not, the United States is integral to the survival and security of the Western world. It is the largest power within it. It is the largest military power. It is the largest power in really every way that counts, the economic and militaristic side of things, as well as a trade power. Because of that, it would make absolutely no sense for us, the very police and peacekeepers of this Western world and the maintainer of it, to step away and go, you know what, we're going to let it collapse for the hell of it, for fun, and let other people try and sweep it up under their sphere of influence. That would mean just silliness and stupidity on my end, not to, get very strongly worded with it, but it would make absolutely no sense. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our second poll question of the last segment. It says the U.S. is set to start a multi-week campaign in the Middle East, and the question is that the start of war? 33% said it is essentially the start of a war. 32% said it will only be a revenge attack, meaning a one-time or one-off attack. 23% said it depends on the style of attack, and 12% said unsure. And to me, I gotta say that a multi-week campaign in the Middle East sounds to me like the start of a preliminary war. Of course, it could simply be attacks which are, obviously spread out over multi-weeks. But to me, this has the indications of maybe turning into something bigger. Because if we really wanted to, we could just simply go in, launch a couple of major attacks within a couple of days, and be done with it. But now that we're going to do it over multi-weeks, that indicates something much larger. So to me, it's a little too early to say it is definitely the start of a war, but it sounds like it could be the beginning stages of one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it is kind of on the fence in between just being revenge attacks that we're going to be spreading out over a long period of time, or the start of a war. Considering that we're going to be doing this for weeks, like Matthew's saying, it's starting to add a lot more credence that this isn't going to be a one-off attack like last time. This is probably going to be a day after day, time and time again, endless air campaign over the entirety of the Middle East, pretty much, where we're striking Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps camps, Hamas, Hezbollah camps, Houthi camps, any kind of camps that we can find that are Iranian affiliated. We're going to be hitting them and striking them until they either cease to exist or until the Iranians step in to stop their terrorist groups that they're funding from being completely destroyed on their own. That will probably lead to some kind of a direct confrontation in between the United States and Iran. But, of course, that will most likely be a winnable fight from the West, especially if we do not get involved in the final scenario, the final step of escalation, which would be a ground war with Iran. A ground war with Iran, while the United States is one of the greatest and largest militaries in the world, and the coalition we have behind us of our amazing allies like the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Austria, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, and many other nations that will, of course, join us hand in hand in quashing this Iranian issue. It would be a drawn-out ground war, because most of Iran's population actually lives on the very coast of the Caspian Sea. This is where most of their population is. So to get to them, you either have to go through the mountains to the west that border Iraq, which the Iraqis can tell you about, that in the Iran-Iraq war, it was a pretty tough deal. It ended up just being a slog here in this mountain range for about 10 years until the Iraqis officially won the war. Or you could land in the Persian Gulf or the Gulf of Oman and then go through the hundreds of endless miles of mountain ranges to finally make it to the populated areas of Iran. So it'd be very tough to actually deal with Iran in a ground war, just because of the terrain that you have to cross to even be able to get to the population areas in northern Iran. But there is a little bit of a bright side. Of course, with the overwhelming air superiority and air power that the Western world has, we could probably end up overpowering our way up there, or just figuring out a way to get to those population centers without really having to fight through an endless amount of mountains. We could do something very similar to Afghanistan, where we just fly in some helicopters filled with CIA guys with suitcases of money, and then they go around and buy local support so that way no one shoots at the Americans that are coming in and landing at the local airfield, and then setting up a FOB, and then a base of operations, and then a full-on air base a little bit later, allowing for thousands of U.S. forces, tens of thousands of U.S. forces to just come funneling in right in the most strategic hearts of the nation. That's something that could be done. But beyond...
So you think they're actually going to attack inside of Iran?
I don't think so, but if that was like the final step, if that's where everything led to, and we actually did get into conventional war, there are more than one ways to skin Iran, and I think that probably would be the best way to do it, is to just pull an Afghan situation and just drop off CIA guys to go buy off local support, and then just have the armed forces come in with really no opposition where they're landing. But that
might
probably
be a good idea. Me personally, on Iran, I don't think we're actually going to attack Iran itself, or at least anywhere that's populated. Definitely not Tehran. I saw some people saying that should be attacked directly. I'm going to withhold my opinion on that for now, because I don't know enough about what that might entail. Obviously, it would be the most severe escalation possible, but at the same time, it could be deserved. But I'll withhold judgment for now. But I don't think we're going to attack anything of significance in Iran. If we do, it'll probably be on the outskirts near the border with other countries. But I think they're going to pretty much keep it limited to attacking the proxies in other countries, in my opinion.
Now, interestingly enough, Matthew, there was a time in history, back in 1988, where the United States, in about 30 minutes, destroyed half of Iran's navy, and it did not lead to a war. And that's something that a lot of people don't know about. And there is a chance, there is actually, because of this, it lays a historic precedent that we could end up attacking the Iranians and destroying a large amount of their military abilities without going into a full-blown conventional war with them. To try and explain this little thing here really quickly, Operation Praying Mantis came around after a U.S. destroyer was hit by an Iranian mine in the Persian Gulf escorting a tanker. It ended up causing this massive ordeal where minesweepers were brought in. They found out there was a load of uranium mines in international waterways. So the United States drew up a plan to strike back. And on the 18th of April 1988, in the course of 30 minutes, we ended up destroying half of Iran's navy. And then nothing happened beyond that. We just ended up destroying half of it, and the Iranians never retaliated in any real way, or any meaningful way for that matter. So going off of that, it is possible that we could actually end up striking the Iranians a lot like we did under Operation Praying Mantis, and it's enough of a lashing for them that they decide that they do not want to get into a full-blown conventional war or start to act like that. They may actually step back once we show our teeth like we did in 1988 and go, yeah, you know what, this isn't what we want. We'll just, kind of stay to ourselves for a few years until we start doing stuff again. So
If we don't show our teeth though in these upcoming multi-week attacks, that either indicates we have a very weak strategy to responding to the terrorists, or we're scared that Iran has a nuke and it might launch it at one of the surrounding countries. And at the moment, I'm gonna lay bets on that we're not actually attacking inside of Iran. I doubt that's gonna happen. Not because of the nuke situation. I think that might be moot, although we still really don't know if they have a nuke or not. That's a critical question that I'm assuming some people in the intelligence community might have the answer to. Although, I'll be honest with you, we really don't have a lot of answers on Iran when it comes to that. It's kind of interesting how the U.S. government has not let the American people in on whether or not they think it's likely or not that they have a nuke. We're totally in the dark, so we don't have any information on that. So if we don't strike inside of Iran, I'm going to also lay odds on that we're probably just taking a weak approach to it, which would not be a good idea, but that would probably be the most likely reason, in my opinion.
I would agree. I would say so. And I don't think we should get to the point where we are conducting a ground invasion of Iran. I don't think that's necessarily the best case scenario. That's really a worst case scenario. But if we have to start getting aggressive like that, like, the Operation Praying Mantis levels of aggressive, I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing. In fact, it may actually be a positive in this situation before we have to get into a ground invasion or something similar. But really quickly, though, Matthew, I saw someone in the chat say something I have to address. Someone called Anthony said, United States has never won a war. What is the host talking about? We had help in World War I and World War II, lost in Vietnam, Middle East, and the Civil War with the Confederate States. I don't know what grass you're smoking, pal, because I think the United States is still one country and the Confederate States ceased to exist. So, having a feeling the United States ended up winning that war. Another thing, when you're in a war, regardless whether there's help or not, and you're on the winning side, you win the war, that's not considered a loss, and that's just stupid to say. I don't even get where you're coming from. Also, if we lost every war, how does the nation even exist in the first place? I don't know if you've heard about it, but there's this thing called the American Revolutionary War, where the continental United States fought against the British Empire and ended up winning. And in the Treaty of Paris in 1783, the British ceded American independence to us and also ceded everything east of the Mississippi to us as well. So, gotta say, there's a few. I'm not going to go through the entire history, like when we beasted on the Mexicans in the Mexican-American War and ended up taking about half their country from them, from Texas to California, or any other wars for that matter, where we ended up blasting the hell out of people on our own and ended up winning the wars. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I have no idea what kind of drugs you're on, because I would like to know. They've got to be some medical grade, high quality Peruvian blow, because to say America has never won a war is absolutely outrageous. I guess the Gulf War never happened either, where General Norman Schwarzkopf surrounded the Iraqi army in Kuwait in a flawless trapdoor maneuver. I guess that never happened either. I guess we got our asses beat in the Gulf War, and the Iraqi and Saddam Hussein is just oddly not in power anymore, just through domestic measures. That is...
If America wants to win a war, we can win it. But the only thing is that the most of the time when we lose wars, or we sort of like, don't necessarily lose them, but sort of come to a stalemate and then we leave, like in the Middle East, like before, is when our hearts really aren't in it, kind of like our hearts weren't in law school, actually. That's typically when we decide basically that we need to pull out and get out of there instead of, having a decisive victory. Even in Vietnam, we go there, our hearts really aren't in it because really our guys aren't really wanting to fight there. And then it doesn't go right. Like look at Russia for instance. Their soldiers get sent to Ukraine to fight an unjust invasion of that country, and their hearts aren't in it because Putin's the one who's wanting to do that in his own selfish interests, and they can't win inside of Ukraine either because their hearts aren't in it. If you're defending your homeland, that's a whole nother story. Like if we're defending the United States of America like domestic homeland, we'll fight to the death, and our hearts will definitely be in it, and we'll most likely win without a doubt, pretty much against any country in the world. And that goes for pretty much every country, no matter how small or large it is. It comes basically down, in my opinion, to morale.
I would agree with that completely. And I also see some other people, Matthew, in the chat, adding in some stuff. Like J33 Plover said, didn't we win the War of 1812 too? Actually, we did. And that one ended up being a draw in the Treaty of Ghent of 1815, signed in Ghent in Belgium. And here we go. Here's Ghent right there. That's where the treaty was signed. It actually ended up being a status quo antebellum treaty, which means that phrase is Latin. That means that it is going to be status quo pre-war. So that means that everything returns to the way it was before the war even started. No one gains or loses anything. And that's kind of weird. You know, you never really hear about that. And also, that just to cue some of y'all in case if y'all aren't making the connection, antebellum is actually a Latin term meaning pre-war. Ante meaning before, and bellum meaning war in Latin. And so whenever you're here in the South, this is a very common thing you'll hear, is that a house or a like a plantation mansion or something like that is antebellum. That means that it's pre-Civil War, because there was a massive architectural change post-Civil War that made really everything completely different in the South. So the things that were pre-Civil War, they're called antebellum, which means pre-war in Latin. But anyways, hope that does address that well, because that was a historical falsehood that I was like, I cannot believe that was even uttered as a truthful statement, because that would be ridiculous to say something like, the United States has never won a war, because if we hadn't, how are we still here 200 and something years later? That would be silly. That would just be silly.
We win all the wars that mattered. All the ones that have ever mattered to our survival, we win them.
Man, whenever we're fighting most wars, we're leaning back in the chair, fighting them casual. But when the wars really matter, we lean forward and get in that competitive gamer stance, so we just beat the shit out of people for fun, really. But anyways,
I feel like the U.S. sometimes prolongs wars. You know, not necessarily the government prolonging them on purpose, but sort of like just the way they're fought are not really designed to be super quick, decisive victories. Are kind of like long-term, like stay in the Middle East for 20 years and then kind of just sort of meander around. Obviously, that's a safer way to do it if you're looking to try to minimize troop losses as much as possible. But at the same time, you know, the risk rises over 20 years that you're going to get sucked into the Middle East like we did and not be able to pull out when you want to, because you've gotten so deeply entrenched into trying to help these countries out, like Afghanistan, that you end up leaving them dependent on us. And then we pull out like we did and leave a vacuum, and then they get absolutely slaughtered by the Taliban. You know, it's just sort of weird to me, like that sometimes the wars that could be much more easily fought and won by the United States don't really go that way. I wonder if sometimes it's by design, or is it just because of poor planning?
Yeah, mostly because of poor planning, because the British Empire in the mid to late 1800s and into the 1900s was in a very similar situation that the United States is in now. They largely had to be the global peacekeepers of the world, especially within the borders of their empire, constantly sending soldiers to, fro, and wherever to try and hold down areas and make sure that things don't go bad. I mean, the British Empire in the 1840s and I believe in the 1880s and 90s ended up in Afghanistan the exact same way that the United States ended up in Afghanistan, and they ended up suffering the same fate that the United States would way in the future. They also did the same things in the Middle East, particularly in the Palestine Mandate, which is what Israel was called under British leadership, because by the year 1947, the British, regardless of anything hell or high water, were going to be relinquishing the Palestine Mandate into an independent country, which they decided would be the nation of Israel. They also did the same thing with Iraq, as well as Jordan. Jordan was actually called, as a mandate, mandatory Transjordan. And then when it was released as an independent nation by the British, it became the nation of Jordan. Iraq was the British Emirate of Iraq, and then it changed from the Emirate of Iraq to just Iraq later on in the future. So you can kind of see that they had to be around there for a while too. And also, one thing I didn't mention there is that not only were they mandates, but in Iraq, there was actually a decent amount of armed uprisings through the 30s and the 40s. And so British security forces, a lot like, and I mean, when you look at the pictures, it's wild because they're driving around old, like 1920s and 1930s style armored cars, but they're almost in the exact same kind of convoy layouts as U.S. convoys would be seen in the 20s, in the 2000s and 2010s inside of Iraq, making sure that there's no armed uprisings happening or any kind of attacks. They really just went out and patrol like Americans would and waited until they came into contact with something, and then they would engage them and destroy them. So when you're kind of put in the position of being like a policeman or a peacekeeper of a sphere of influence, you always end up getting stuck in these conflicts that seem to last forever, because it's really your role to be there and try and make sure that it doesn't blow up into being a serious issue, or to just try and keep it under control as long as you can. So sadly, it's just kind of the position we're in at this point in history, that we have taken the mantle of being a peacekeeper or a policeman of the world and trying to keep things under control, so we get stuck in wars like that.
Yeah, I do agree with you.
I went through like a whole damn like lecture, and I was like, man, I probably lost you like halfway through because it was just so long. But anyways, with that, I think we're on to the next poll. We're on to the questions, one or the other.
So with that, we are fresh out of poll questions to address. But with that, we're moving on to our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $50 donation from Steve Watkins at work, who is still at work. After 2.5 weeks of Enforcer Matt's hiatus, he's still working. Steve Watkins is the hardest worker of the channel. I'm convinced of that. But thank you very much, Steve, for that support. And he says that Ukraine is taking a page from SpaceX, making all the old school weapons builders look bad. And hi, Matt. And hi, Steve.
And hello, Steve. I guess I'm here. I'm just here. But welcome back to Matt again, and thank you so much for welcoming back. I'm glad to see everyone's giving Enforcer Matt a warm welcome back. And also, Ukraine is taking a page from SpaceX, making all the old school weapons builders look bad. And I think they really are, because they're doing so much with such limited amounts of resources. They are really on top of the game. I mean, they're doing a great job, very impressive. And I got to thank you so much for the support and giving a shout out to the Ukrainian weapons industry, because they have been working overtime for 2 years now, and they, after the war, will be making bank. So many countries are going to be wanting Ukrainian weapons because they're going to be so cheap and effective, especially in the drone category, that a lot of these companies in Ukraine are probably going to rise to be leaders in the drone warfare industry post-war. But still,
it goes to show you that you don't need humongous, massive budgets, and you don't need all the lobbying, and you also don't need people buying $400 hammers either. You can get it done with simple tools and people using their brains to, more smarter way than the most financially, I guess, advantaged way, like the U.S. companies always do. They always prioritize profits over innovation, and the smaller companies have the advantage on them for sure. And Ukraine has a humongous advantage because they're fighting a war, so they have to do it right now. And also, they're not going so expensive and so massive in creating these complex systems. They can create the small drones, and that way they can get done with stuff much quicker than before.
And I would certainly agree with that. And once again, thank you so much for the support, Steve Watkins, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Tom Pinky, who puts in a $40 donation. And thank you very much, Tom, for that support. That's very generous. And I don't see a comment left by Tom, sadly, and I really hate that because I wanted to read one off. But thank you very much, Tom, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much, Tom Pinky, for the $40 super chat. It's the third super chat that you've ever thrown in the history of this channel, but you didn't throw in a comment. But that support, regardless whether it has a comment or not, is greatly appreciated by us. Y'all are the only thing that makes the channel possible to keep running, and your support is saying a lot. It's saying that the Lee Spring Army is going to continue to let the fires burn that has fed this channel for 2 years to continue to burn well into the future. And I got to thank you so much once again for being a massive part of why the flag of the Lee Spring Army, which finally will be getting released here in the near future, will be here for quite a while. And thank you so much once again for being one of those members of the Lee Spring Army, Tom. And with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have the largest super chat of the night, which is from MN, longtime channel legend, who puts in a $200 donation. A huge shout out for that massive support. That is huge. And MN says, thank you so much for the service. And Ukraine will win, and you will be there with us. And I gotta say, Slava Ukraine.
And I gotta say, thank you so much, MN, for appreciating what we've done. It has been a massive effort keeping this channel running, and now, with law school behind us, it is going to become even a bigger effort, and really is going to become our entire lives again like it was in the summer, and I'm very happy to have that be the case. This has been something that I feel that has been an absolutely amazing thing to do. I never knew. It is so crazy. I do not mean to go down memory lane with you all, because I feel like I do this a pretty good bit, but when I was in high school, I remember that kids around me that were my age wanted to become YouTubers. And I remember I'd sit there and say, oh, come on, y'all. Being a YouTuber, come on, that's ridiculous. You know, pick a real job. You know, you can't make it as a YouTuber. No one can ever make it as a YouTuber. That's impossible. That's insane. And so, out of all that, years later, I look back and I laugh at those comments I used to say to people because now I'm a YouTuber, and now I'm going to be a full-time YouTuber as a career for the foreseeable future. And that is absolutely insane to me to think that somehow I ended up going from joking about YouTubers to now this channel is being credited as one of the top 10 sources of war news by the Kyiv Post and being mentioned by General David Petraeus as a primary source for the public on news of the war, a revolutionary way that people are being able to see what a war is really like over there in a far-flung corner of the world. That is just insane to me to think. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying what we've done, because tonight, especially after what I saw in that book, and I know that sounds like I'm really emphasizing what was in that book, and while it was only really about a sentence that was dedicated to this channel and many other greats who have been helping out in Ukraine, it still feels like a great deal of vindication of all the work and effort that we put into this, to have our name mentioned by someone who's been in the news, and a lot of y'all know this guy is kind of a household name in America for one reason or another. It is absolutely crazy to think that that's been the case, and it made doing this seem so much more worthwhile because, you know, I say we're never here for the praise, but getting praise like that, really does boost my spirits. It makes me feel like what we're doing is really something. It must be revolutionary because, hell, even generals and directors of the CIA are watching this channel and saying that it really is something special. And that's incredible to me. And I got to thank you so much, Emin, for being in the same boat as those folks who are giving us incredibly kind and amazing words as well, and enjoying this channel. And I will be there with y'all when Ukraine wins, because we are going to be here until the war ends. I gave y'all a promise nearly 2 years ago at this point, and so much time has passed, but I'm always a firm believer that a promise is a promise, and if you give a promise, it has to be followed through. This channel will be here until the war ends. The Lee Spring Army will never die. The Lee Spring Army is continuing to always push forward and strive to be the best community on YouTube, the greatest community on YouTube, and not only that, the one that provides the most support to Ukraine possible. I gotta thank every single one of y'all, including you, Emin, for being here with us, continuing to watch the news each and every day, and not only that, putting in massive support to this channel to make it possible for us to keep running another day. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $30 super chat from longtime channel legend Margaret Hemsley. Everyone knows Margaret, and it's good to see you once again, Margaret. After my 2.5-week hiatus, it feels like it's been forever. Longest 2 weeks of my life, it feels like, because of law school. And 2 weeks I would not want to relive, to be perfectly honest. But Margaret, thank you very much for the $30 support. And she says, I said I'd be given to Patreon from now on, but today calls for a celebration super chat. And I apologize for not saying hi personally, but I worked a night shift, and this is my 2 a.m. LSA Legends All. It says, led by our GOATs, Andrew and Matt.
Hey, and thank you so much for the massive support, Margaret. And thank you for supporting it through a super chat. I know you're on Patreon, and I thank you so much for that. And now, once again, that law school's over, the Patreon is going to be kicking it, and it's really going to be doing some pretty damn good work. Hopefully, we'll be able to put a whole bunch of stuff on there, because we had big plans before law school started to make the Patreon great, to make it incredible, to always have stuff uploaded there, and not only that, stuff that would tie into like gun reviews and stuff like that. That was something I wanted to do, and we are going to be able to finally get back to that again. And also, no problem not saying hi personally, because many people may have not seen this tonight, but the live chat was flying at the beginning of the stream. We had like 150 chats coming in a minute, which means 2 a second, and it was very difficult to get to everyone. And I'm so sorry if I missed anyone that I usually say hi to. There were so many people, it was impossible to say hi to everyone. And I got to thank all of y'all for being here and so excited tonight about everything going on, the return of Matt, us being mentioned by David Petraeus, the Ukrainians getting the ability to blast the Russians in Crimea. It was just a huge night tonight. And I've got to thank you so much once again, Margaret, for being here, and thank you so much for saying that we're LSA, led by the goats. I got to thank you for saying we're goats, and watch out, Catterall. But anyways, thank you so much once again, and also, thank you for joining us here on, joining us here at like 2 a.m. at the break of dawn. I gotta say, that's something. And thank you so much once again for the support, Margaret. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one, but thank you so much.
All right, and our next one goes to Rick Clay, who throws in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Rick, for that support. He says, I told you, and you have to thank. I recommended your podcast to him and ISW.
Really? You did? You did? That is crazy.
I do remember that.
That is absolutely crazy. And I got to thank you so much for the massive support, Rick. And I do have you to thank. Thank you, Rick Clay, for letting him know about this channel. And also, I got to say, he also gave a shout out in the book, because many of y'all saw in the intro that after it said in the Enforcer channel, there was a ... That was me paraphrasing the quote, because it went on for about a whole other sentence on the Institute for the Study of War. But I have to give a massive shout out to the Institute for the Study of War. While I cut them out of that quote at the beginning of the stream to make the quote more concise for time reasons, the Institute for the Study of War is one of the best institutes for the study of war out there, period. It's in the name. And they have been an absolutely incredible source. We've used them a lot on this channel. Always have to give them a massive deal of credit. And I've got to thank you so much for letting the Institute for the Study of War and General Petraeus know about this channel. And apparently they are now watching, or at least Petraeus has watched. I don't know. I don't know if he's still watching or if he watched for a little. I don't know, but hopefully he's still watching, because we'd be very honored to know that we have like literal greats, 4-star generals like Petraeus here watching the show. We would be wildly honored to know that they're still watching right now. But we'll probably never know, because, folks like them, they stay quiet. I don't think they're going to be active in the live chat or anything. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support, Rick. And once again, helping this channel to keep running. And on top of that, apparently getting us recognition from someone like David Petraeus, which is incredible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Certify. Throws in a $20 donation and does not leave a comment. But Certify, thank you very much, as always, for supporting the channel through rain, sleet, and snow. You always support the channel, actually, and thank you very much for that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, Certify. You threw in the pair, and it's sliding across the ground and yelling, goal! And that's like some European thing, But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because you've been here for a long time. And while your comment doesn't have any, while your support doesn't have any comment on it, it does help us to keep commenting on stuff. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Anonymouse, who puts in a $27 donation, and thank you very much, Anonymouse, for that support. And they said, congratulations, and your parents and family must be proud of your accomplishment, and here, the LSA never forgets we are here for Ukraine and the people. And also, real quick, I know some people are probably curious, how did our parents take the news that we were no longer interested in pursuing law school and that we were going to withdraw from it? And actually, I'm sure some of you would be surprised and shocked. They were actually perfectly fine with that, and actually they encouraged it, because they said that if we were not into it and we really weren't trying to pursue that as a career, it would be kind of useless to go get the JD and incur that much debt if we really weren't going to use it toward becoming an attorney. And to me, I'm perfectly honest, I figured out my heart was not in it after the first semester, and I kind of forced myself to go back this semester, and I simply was not happy. Maybe one day I'll look back and think, maybe I want to give another crack at it and maybe go back, but I seriously doubt that. I'm learning that my heart is other places, and it's definitely not law school for right now. So I'm trying to put this in the most politically way or correct way possible. I really did not enjoy that whatsoever. Like I couldn't hardly wake up and be happy about anything. I just felt miserable, and it felt like it was never going to get better. And I had 2.5 more years to go, so I was only like barely touching the surface of it, and it would have gotten even harder after law school. So if your heart wasn't in it in law school, it definitely wasn't going to be in it after you got out. So I'll see where life takes me, and so will the Enforcer, but I'm confident that we're making the right decision here. But Enforcer, what say you?
And really quickly, Matthew, before we move on into
talking about that super chat and talking about what our parents said again. Rick Clay just said that Petraeus is actually watching the stream right now, and apparently Rick Clay is great friends with Petraeus because he says he talks to him nearly daily. So hello to General
Really?
Petraeus. Yeah, I hope you're enjoying the
Hello
stream
to you.
tonight, and thank you so much for the mention in the book. If you can't tell, and I'm sure you can because we've been talking about it all night, we are wildly honored to know that we were really the only YouTube channel that was put in the book as a source on the war. We honestly, I feel like we don't even are owed the honor. There's so many YouTube channels out there that are larger than us and covers the exact same sort of news that we do, but we are entirely honored to know that apparently we were the one that met the mark and was put in the book in that section. It means a lot to us, and I gotta thank you so much for that. And if everyone,
Huge thanks. That is a huge honor, by the way. If the general's actually watching, he'll find it funny to know that I was actually woken up in the middle of the night. I thought I was getting robbed, but actually it was just the enforcer showing me, look, we're in the book. I was like, what? And they showed me the whole like quote from it. And I was like, no way, like we're in the general's book. Like that is insane. The two of us, and I've been on a hiatus for 2.5 weeks, but I have been doing this for quite a long time. Like the two of us on the YouTube channel and getting shouted out in the book. That is nuts that the channel was actually put in there. And right before that happened, we were in the Kyiv Post as well. So it seemed like those two really big things happened back to back, and we're honored by both of them. So thank you very much.
and if everyone could say hello to the general, I would be wildly appreciative because it's absolutely incredible to know that that is really the first book that we've ever been put into the literal pages of history in. And of course, me being a history major, it's wild to think that I'm now a part of history in a small sense. That's wild to think. And I got to thank you so much for giving us that high honor once again. And also, Rick, that's very interesting to know that you're actually friends with Petraeus, talk to him daily. That's really cool. That's really neat, actually. But with that, moving back into Anonymous's super chat and talking about our parents. Our dad was actually one who really started to question whether we should get in it or not. As I've told y'all, he is an attorney and he's been doing it for 30 years. And nowadays he's starting to look back and he's starting to go, was it really worth it? Was this career one that I was happy with? And the answer is kind of no. And he's started to kind of tell us about that. He was like, y'all don't really even seem to like it that much, and I really liked it a lot when I started. Now looking back, it just really wasn't worth it. Y'all might want to, consider whether y'all really want to get into this or not. And that's something that I've got to say really started to weigh on me a lot more with decision making, because when someone's been in it for 30 years and as your own father, and they're telling you you might not like this at all, because I ended up not really liking it much at the end, really for the past, I think he said 8 or 9 years, that's something that I was like, I don't really think this is for me. And of course all of y'all can probably tell, because everyone behind the scenes could probably tell, because it was really hard for me to do this, which I love as a passion, and then to go to law school and sit in uncomfortable chairs and sit through lectures where I'm interested in the subject, but I just can't even get into it. Like, I can't even really explain, because I do find the law interesting, mostly because there's a decent amount of history behind it, but at the same time, for some reason, I couldn't really, get really into it. And I can't really explain how that works for me, but still, our parents are incredibly proud of us being mentioned in General Petraeus' book, being mentioned by the Kyiv Post, what we've done on this channel, how much we've raised for fundraisers, helping out people around the world. They've actually been completely blown away, and they always joke around that, of course, that's just what would happen. Because throughout my life, for some reason, I've always been able to just fall into something, as everyone says around me, and say, oh, he's going to do fine at it. And somehow that happened here. And I was, everyone, including me, was like, how in the hell did that happen? And then Matthew joined, and then we both started doing it. And then everyone was like, how the hell did that happen for both of them? And so they were perfectly fine with our decision. In fact, they were very supportive of it, and believe that it is actually the right decision. After I made the decision today to withdraw, both my mom and my dad were like, honestly, we think you made the right call. That is certainly 100% the right call, and you need to do what you're best at in life. And really, honestly, it seems like this is one of the things I'm best at. But thank you so much once again for saying the LSA is behind us, and the LSA never forgets, because the LSA never forgets, the LSA never dies, and the LSA will always be here, and I'll always be here
making sure that the beacon is lit for the Lee Spring Army to gather around and know that the Lee Spring Army will truly never die. And so thank you so much once again, Anonymous, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope I addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, one other thing, while we're still on the topic, so that way we don't go over it over and over and over, and I'll address the same thing over and over and over. On the topic of withdrawing from law school, that was probably one of the toughest decisions I've ever had in my life. I wrestled with that decision for probably about at least 3 weeks to a month, and I've never been so twisted on where to go with that decision in my life. Like, that was a tough one, and it was for the enforcer as well. And I think early this week, when I was having a hard time even getting out of bed to go to law school, and then I would literally drive to the school and, sit there in the car thinking, I don't even want to get out to go in here because I'm not interested in what I'm doing. This isn't where I belong. And I was just like just shuffling through it. Like, it was tough. I actually came out with decent grades during the first semester. It was okay. It was B's. So nothing bad, but if your heart's not in something, like, it doesn't matter if you're doing okay in it or not. Like, you just can't motivate yourself to get going. And that was where I was at. And, tough decision, but I think I will look back and find it to be a very good one. But unfortunately, you have anything to add?
I don't think so. And so with that,
Oh.
I said that I was like, it was a put down, man. I was like, I don't think so. But no put down there at all. I just want to make sure that we're able to get on to everyone else's super chats tonight, because we have so many of them. And I want to make sure that we can get to some live chats too. But luckily, in case y'all didn't know this, when we were doing law school, we get like no sleep. Like, I would get like 5 hours of sleep most days. And Matthew, I think, got about the same, like maybe 6 or so. So we were exhausted every single day. So usually we would try and cut down these streams to be short, like 2.5 hours. And of course, we told you all about that months ago. But now, not being in law school, there really is no time constraint. But I still want to make sure that we get to everyone in a timely and orderly manner. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Anonymous. And I hope we were able to address the whole law school thing fairly well with y'all. And I gotta say as well, before we move on, thank you everyone so much for y'all's understanding. I've seen nothing but understanding in the live chat tonight and support for our decision. I have to say it was a very tough one. Much like Matthew, I had a very tough time making that decision. But I'm so glad to know that the Lee Spring Army still stands with us every single step of the way. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Tracy D1233, who throws in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Tracy, for that support. And she said, "Congrats on the citation in General Petraeus' book. It's a great honor, and Slav Ukraine."
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for putting a little bit of respect on it. To put it that way, it is amazing to think that we got mentioned in the book, Tracy. Blows me away, and I feel like we're going to be saying that a lot tonight, because it seems like there's a lot of super chats talking about that, and probably a lot of live chats too. But I'm so honored. I can't believe it, because I've been doing this thing and never looked at all for any kind of praise on our end. I always just looked, if anything, to try and get praise for the community, not for the channel. With Doctors Without Borders, which we tried to get credit for the channel, and then they never responded. But anyways, moving on from that, it is great to know that we were mentioned by General Petraeus, because I always hold almost all generals in very high regard. You had to do a lot of footwork, and not only that, you had to be pretty competent to be able to become a general. And the fact that he is a 4-star general who was the commander of CENTCOM, and not only that, he then became a director of the CIA, that is a very distinguished life right there, especially as far as the positions he held in the United States government. So I have not only in the government, but also in the military as well. That is incredible to think that we were mentioned in his book. Because I don't even feel like we are deserving of the sentence that we got that credit us as being a Revolutionary War news source in that book, because the guy has done a lot more than I could ever imagine to do at this point in my life. Being a 4-star general, the highest general that you can become outside of wartime, because there's only been 2 5-star generals in history. Yeah, the highest ranking person in the armed forces, pretty much 4-star general, and not only that, the director of the CIA. That's crazy to think that we got mentioned by someone that is as honored by their titles and their positions as him. That is crazy to me, and I gotta say, I'm as excited as well. And of course, Slav Ukrainian, thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Alfred's mom, as well as a $20 super chat from James McEldoon. And thank you very much, Alfred's mom and James, for that support. And I must admit, the Alfred's mom username got me scared for a minute. I was wondering if that was a joke, but it's actually someone's real username. So thank you both very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you, Alfred's mom, for your first super chat ever. That's actually crazy. It's your first super chat ever. And also, thank you, James, for your 5th super chat ever. Neither of y'all put in comments, but your support is helping the channel to keep running, and we are greatly appreciative to that. And so I must say, thank you, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
And our next one goes to Flash1, who's a longtime channel viewer as well. And he puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, good sir. He says, hello, Matt. It's great to hear your voice again. Not to have it, but to hear it again. He says, my question is, if you could ask Zelensky one question, what might it be? LSA and Slav Ukraine.
Let's see. In Flash, that's a great question. And also, it is great to have Matt back again. Is it Matt back? That's like get your backpack, get your Matt back, get your Matt back. But let's see. If I could ask Zelensky one question, if I could ask him one question,
I would ask him, did he really play the piano like that?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah,
did he really do that?
Like, geez, man. I mean, you know, that was some real piano playing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, we gotta get to the bottom of this. Another question I ask him are those real? But with that, I hope
those.
I'm just kidding. I'm just like,
what you mean?
You know,
what you mean? Those?
Man, you don't want to know what I mean. It's like you don't even.
What the hell?
But so really, like, the real question I'd ask is, what do you plan on doing when the war is over? That's the question I'd ask. And I would wonder what the answer would be. I don't think anyone's actually asked him that question. So that would be my question, actually, Flash. And I gotta say, Slow Granny, thank you for your 5th super chat to the channel ever and helping it to keep running. And thank you so much once again for being an old guard. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Junebug72, throws in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Junebug, for that support. And Junebug said, Matt, with a lot of exclamation points behind it. Hello to you both, and hello to you, Junebug. It's good to see you once again. And she said, here's one for the live chat, please, and have a wonderful evening, and stay well, and Slav Ukraine, and Am Israel Chai, and God bless America, and thank you.
And so, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel keep on running. Junebug is 72, and I gotta say, hello to you, and of course, Matt! But also, thank you so much for sponsoring a live chat. We will get to that in a second. But we are having an absolutely incredible evening, and I've got to be so honest with y'all, it feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders since I put in my official notice of withdrawal at law school. It feels like it feels like the sky is opening up again, and it's perfectly sunny and clear out, at least in my mind, because law school was such a mental burden and a weight. There was this huge assignment coming up, and now that we're withdrawing, I can talk about it, you know, without worrying, oh no, is the provost going to have a problem? And like, you know, it doesn't matter, we're withdrawing, but there was this huge assignment coming up. It was a motion for summary judgment, and we got like this 70-80 page pack of stuff that we needed for the assignment, and then we had to pull up a whole bunch of stuff on Westlaw, and we're gonna have to write this massive, like, it was like a 12-page motion for summary judgment, which was going to be ungodly difficult, especially considering the amount of free time I have, which is non-existent, especially doing this and law school. So that was stressing me out to oblivion in my mind, because I was like, how in the hell am I really going to fit that in to do it? Because I can't go through this semester and do as badly as I did last semester, because I had no time to do anything, read, study, or anything. And so when I put in that withdrawal today, I was like, I can see clearly now that the rain is gone. That was terrible singing, but that's what I felt like. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and asking for having a great one. We're having an amazing one tonight, Junebug. And of course, God bless America. Am Yisrael Chai. I know I'm saying that so wrong, and I'm so sorry. And Slava Ukraini Slava. And thank you, Junebug. And what do we have for a live chat, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question is going to go to Sebastian Rod, who says, what is Ukraine's overall strategy for 2025?
Ukraine's overall strategy, well, actually, we don't know, because they really planned out this year's strategy. 2025, planning that far, it's great, but it never will actually come into practice. The plan's going to change drastically by the time 2025 arrives. So I have to be honest with you. I think we're going to have to get another live chat, Matthew, because I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. And so with that, can we grab another one?
So our second live chat is going to go to 420, who says, "Do you think the U.S. will attack the IRGC in Iran and not just proxies in Iraq and Syria?"
That's something I believe they certainly have a great possibility of doing, because attacking the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is not a direct attack upon the Iranian government itself. It's a proxy kind of like terrorist group. And so they may actually do something like that within Iran's borders. We did get to see that Pakistan did something very similar, actually striking Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps camps near the Pakistani border with Iran. And they were able to do that with great success. And the Iranians never actually responded with equal blows against the Pakistanis. So it's entirely possible based off of that precedent. So that would be my answer. And thank you once again, Flash, for not just sponsoring one live chat, which I wasn't able to answer, but 2 live chats. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next super chat is going to go to JD Mako 23, who also throws in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, JD, for that support. He says, "You two are like Chewie and Han Solo, inseparable, and LSA forever."
But who's Chewie? That's
What's Chewie? Is that the woolly mammoth?
Yeah, that's the trick question, man. Because it's me. I'm the fat one. But beyond that, anyways, thank you so much for the support, JD Mako. And we are like Chewie and Han Solo. We're inseparable, or we're like Toad and Frog together again. But nevertheless, or we're like
Toad and Frog thing cracks me up.
Or we're like Bert and Ernie. Bert and Ernie. No hot dogs again. But beyond that, I gotta say,
oh Lord, Bert and Ernie never had hot dogs to begin with. They were vegan.
That's true. But I can tell you, while they never had a hot dog, there is one guy out there that loves slurping on a sausage, buddy. But beyond that, I gotta say, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, JD Mako, and thank you for supporting the channel and helping it to keep running. And of course, Lee Spring Army forever. The Lee Spring Army will never die, and the Lee Spring Army will always keep running. And it will keep running as much as Chris's mom is running around the parking lot trying to get her nightly dues. But nevertheless, thank you so much.
Chris's mom's still out there?
Chris's mom is still out there. And in fact, Chris's mom was joined by Robert West's mom last night. Oh, actually a night before. And so we actually have 2 moms now. We're starting to get a brothel running up in here. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for support, JD Mako, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I would agree. We are like Toad and Frog together again. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from the BC Skyman, the channel legend. And it's good to see you once again, BC. It has been a good minute since I've seen your name. He says, "Welcome back, Enforcer Matt, and we missed you, man. And congratulations to the Enforcer being in General Petraeus' book. And BC, thank you very much for welcome back, and I missed you as well, and everyone in the LSA. And also, I am also very glad to see the mention in General Petraeus' book. But Enforcer, what say you?"
I have to agree, BC Skyman. I am ecstatic over the mention. So ecstatic. I literally went around everywhere today. It was like, oh my god, I'm in a book! I told everyone I knew. It was crazy. There's still one friend. Actually, it's my best friend. I have not told him yet. I'm going to be telling him after the stream tonight. But it's crazy. It's just crazy. And I'm blown away. I've already said how much of an honor it is, so I'm going to make sure not to go through that whole spiel again. But still, I gotta say, it was incredible. And thank you so much, BC Scammer, for congratulating me on that. It was the Enforcer channel, actually, that was credited. So Matthew gets credit for that, too, because he's a part of the channel. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again. And, of course, welcome back to Matt. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Teslans, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Teslans, as well. They said, "Yeehaw!" And guess who's back? Enforcer Matt. And he is back. It's Enforcer Matt.
Guess who's back? Back again. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for the support, Teslan. And of course, Enforcer Matt is back. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
I saw someone in the live chat say, "Who is the Watcher?" The Watcher is the handler. The Watcher makes sure everything that's said on the stream is up to agency standards. The Watcher is here to watch with the eyeball, and that is all. And we shall say any more.
That's actually
but that's the minion right there in the Watcher live chat right there. The minion makes sure everything goes perfectly fine. But anyways, with that being said, we're moving on to our next super chat question, which goes to Monsieur Gaston, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Gaston. I said, I admire your dedication and good luck on your future endeavors to the both of you. And thank you.
And thank you, Monsieur Gaston, for your support and admiring our dedication. And I hope that my dedication shines through like a great beacon, and that you'll vote for me in the next presidential election.
But nevertheless, I don't know why I turned into a certain president from the 70s there, but beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support, and our future endeavors are nothing but bright. Law school and being an attorney wasn't exactly the path we need to take, but there are so many others that have so much promise and so much brilliance in their future. And of course, in the end, I'm still going to be going down the same path I was planning on going down every single time, to get into politics and to become the president of the United States. That is still the goal. By 2040, I hope to be able to make that possible. And I hope that all of y'all are there with me, backing me every step of the way, while I hopefully make it into the Oval Office in 2040 and finally am able to try and I don't know about that wordage, but I'll hopefully be an amazing president. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Monsieur Gaston, and I hope I addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we've got a $20 super chat from the Jay Bagwell, the channel legend as well.
Hey!
Also, the channel aficionado. And Jay, thank you very much for that support, and it's good to see you again as well. And he says, congrats to you both for following your gut. And the LSA is proud of both of you and will be here for you until the end of this nightmare. But even if the world goes to hell, we'll have a few laughs on the way, and long live the LSA. And certainly, Jay, we shall have a few laughs along the way. We've seen some very bad things, but we're still laughing. And we've also been through some sort of traumatic things in real life as well, particularly law school, and we're still laughing somehow through that as well. But thank you very much, Jay, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And long live the LSA, Jay. I got to start that off with that. I wonder, y'all, because some of y'all message me directly, and y'all usually see that I kind of sign off to all of y'all by saying long live the LSA. I wonder if y'all think I'm like a patriotic freak about the LSA, and the answer is yeah. I mean, like I'm big into the LSA. I love the LSA, and so I always make sure to mention it. And I've used that as a sign off with many of y'all. I'll be like, I'll see you around, and of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And it's like, man, he's like, is this like a shtick? No, I do that normally. Like I do that at law school. They'll be like, excuse me, this paper is not up to spec, and I'll be like, oh, interesting. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And they're like, what the hell? But nevertheless, thank you so much, Jay, for congratulating us on following our gut. I feel like it is the best decision to make. Honestly, I really feel no regret at all for the decision that has been made. I feel completely fine about that. And I gotta say, I thank you so much for saying, Jay, that the LSA is proud of us. I know that you're one of our most amazing viewers, because we've been able to meet you many times in person, and you have always said that no matter what, hell or high water, you and the rest of the Lee Spring Army will have our back. And it always means a lot to us to know that the Lee Spring Army is an unwavering rock in such an unsteady world, and is always there, always making sure to support each other and us as we continue to make our way through this tumultuous and ever-changing world that we find ourselves in. That is something incredible, and you were certainly one of the people, Jay, that we look at in this community as not only a great friend, but a great supporter and a rock of the Lee Spring Army. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support, and we will certainly have a few laughs along the way, Jay. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Thomas Kruger, who puts in a $10 donation. And he says, the Reunion Pizza Fund. And it's been a good minute since we've had pizza. Thank you very much for funding that fund, because that fund will create a lot of fun for us with our fund. Thank you very much, Thomas. I don't know where I was going with that, but anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
The People Fund. The fun for people.
But nevertheless, thank you so much.
Sounds like communism.
Yeah, it's
The People Fund. The fun for the commune. Commune Fund.
But anyways, thank you so much. I don't know why I laugh like an idiot after those stupid lines I'm giving it, but still, I like them. I think they're funny. But still, thank you, Thomas, for supporting the Reunion Pizza Fund, because it means a lot to us and it helps us to keep this channel running. And of course, I have to say thank you. And thank you for helping our pizza fund to keep going. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again.
All right, and the next one goes to Joseph M. Sika, who throws in a $20 donation. And Joseph is a channel legend. Everyone knows that
Hey, the
for
small
sure.
guy.
It is the Schmall. And he says, hey guys, and welcome back, Matt. And he says, we missed you. And I stopped donating once you went away because I was sad. But now that you're back, here you go. Love you both, guys. And congrats on General Petraeus. Simplify and follow your heart. And take a live chat question. And very kind words, Joseph, and thank you very much. I am, of course, very glad to be back. And it's good to see you once again as well. I'm glad that the channel legends did not leave during my hiatus, because I was somewhat worried that I would come back and someone might have left the channel, like sometimes people like to come and go from the channel. I'm glad to see everyone is still here, because it felt like I was gone for an eternity, and it was actually only 2 weeks. A testament to how law school was doing a number on us. But thank you very much, Joseph. Very kind of you. And also, Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much, Joseph Sika, for saying welcome back to Matt. It's great to know, and you were going to support me. But yeah, you know, it is what it is, Joseph. It is what it is. But still, thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. We love you too, Joseph. We love everyone in the Leaf Spring Army. And also, thank you so much for the congratulations on the little mention in General Petraeus' book. That was a very high honor on our end. And still, thank you so much once again. And of course, we will follow our star-spangled hearts and our piss-colored hearts. Apparently, there's an extra color to red, white, and blue. There's a piss yellow, but nevertheless, we will take a live chat. I'm just playing, Joseph, about the piss-colored heart. But we will make sure to take a live. And so, with that, what do we got, Matthew?
In the live chat question is going to go to New Jersey UFOs. And they said, I haven't heard anything about Belarus lately, let alone their leader. But what has they been up to?
The only thing that I've heard that they're really into lately is that they've been quietly sending their officer corps and their non-coms, which are non-commissioned officers, like sergeants and such things like that, into Russia. And then from Russia, they're transported to the Ukrainian front lines. That was actually confirmed after a Belarusian colonel was killed near the area of Krenki, and his body and his documents were recovered by Ukrainian forces. And we were able to get picture proof that the guy was, in fact, a Belarusian officer fighting with the Russians. So it appears that right now they're trying to get their armed forces limited dabbles and experience with the Ukraine war and how it's fought, maybe to try and hone and refine their own armed forces. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well, and thank you so much, Joseph, for sponsoring it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have let's see here. We have a $10 super chat from the Old Buzzard. And thank you very much, Old Buzzard. That Old Buzzard. Thank you very much, good sir. He says, just a note, I have to buy the General's book. And congratulations.
And
also, the General's book has gotten some publicity here, I must say. I'm sure that the Amazon page will be lighting up since we mentioned it. And everyone's going to be going to take a look now. So I'm glad to see that as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
So to quickly tell y'all what the book is, to plug it, this is the one. General David Petraeus and Andrew Roberts, both co-authoring Conflict, the Evolution of Warfare from 1945 to Ukraine. So to summarize the book, well, actually, hell, they got the summary right behind the book, but apparently it just disappeared when I tried to click on it, so that's that. But beyond that, let's see here. You can see all of the interesting chapters that are in this book. Of course, you can see that the war in Iraq is a pretty big chapter because General Petraeus was heavily involved in the Iraq War, but there's also a lot talking about really all of the conflicts from 1945 up until the war in Ukraine, which is the most recent one. You can see that's pretty much the last chapter next to the wars of the future. So we are in that last chapter, chapter 9, and around page 430 in the physical copy. But that is really cool because technically, this is a history book of modern war. So when you see this book and you see us in it, we're in the pages of history technically in the book, which is just so bizarre to me because one thing in my life that I've always thought is like, you know, I will die one day like everyone else will, but the memory of me and what I did, hopefully to the betterment of the nation or a people, will be put down into story or written form, and people will always know about who I was and what I did. And that's kind of crazy because at least in this book right here, that has already been achieved, which is just crazy to me. But make sure, y'all, to get this book and read it. It's not that I'm getting commissions or anything off of it, but we're in it, and it's not only that, it's also a very interesting
read and a good book overall. I read a good amount of it. Of course, the entirety of the Ukraine War chapter and other parts, and it's very on point with its analysis. Of course, he's a general, so of course it would be on point. But it's a very damn good book, so make sure to read it and check it out. But with that,
I like the cover of it too. It reminds me of one of those Robert Greene books with the way the conflict's in red and stuff like that. Nice cover.
Yeah, I have to say, a really solid cover. Everything about the book's solid. Get it, y'all. Get it down. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again, Old Buzzard, for wanting to get the book, and thank you for supporting this channel and helping us to keep rolling too. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a very generous $50 donation from Darren Maynard, who's also longtime channel legend. Thank you very much, Darren, for that support. And he says, "Welcome back, Matt." And thank you very much, Darren. I'm glad to be back, like I said before. I'm very glad to be back. And also, I'm glad to see that everyone's still here, like I said before. And with that, Enforcer, you have something to say.
I gotta thank you so much, Darren, and of course, welcome back. And thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Kevin Burns, who also says, "Welcome back, Matt." And he puts in a 10 as well. and Kevin, I must say, I'm very glad to be back. I'm glad to see everyone else is still here as well. And I feel like I'm repeating myself like a broken record on these ones right here. But thank you, seriously, Kevin, very much for that support. And we also have a 10 from Shannon Newman. And thank you, Shannon. She says, "Glad you're here, the Enforcer and Enforcer Matt."
Hey, I'm glad I'm here too. Now that Matthew's glad he's here too. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one is from Warren Edgar Gillespie, who puts in a 10 and also says, "Welcome back, Matt." And congrats, Andrew. I wish I could afford more, he says. And Warren, no need to go along that line at all, because any support whatsoever helps the channel out tremendously. And we appreciate it very much in any amount, because it means a huge deal to us. If it's $1 or 100, it's a huge deal to us. And thank you very much for saying welcome back, because, of course, I'm very glad to be back, and I'm glad to see that everyone's still here on the channel. And, of course, what say you?
And I gotta say, Matthew's going to start running his boy's horse saying that after a while. But beyond that, I'm very happy to have Enforcer Matt back. The streams weren't the same without him. And also, it is perfectly all right that that you threw in a $10 super chat, Warren. Every bit of support counts. I know how much a dollar means. $1 is a lot. No matter what people say. There are very unappreciative assholes out there on the internet who make it sound like people are viewers of theirs are supposed to give their life savings over to the channel. I do not believe in that at all. If $10 is the best you can do, then I look at that from you as a $500 super chat. And that's why, regardless of the size of the super chat, whether it literally be $1 or whether it be a $500 super chat, I try and give the same thanks and appreciation to each and every one of y'all, because y'all are giving probably the most y'all can give. And the fact that y'all are doing that is what I appreciate the most. And I got to thank y'all so much for the support. And I got to thank you, Warren, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make it possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Matt Cheer, who puts in a 10, along with David Millsaps, who also puts in a 10 as well. And there are no comments attached. But thank you, David and Matt, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank both of y'all so much for the support. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but of course your support is always greatly appreciated. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, it wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and to make it possible. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well. And we are on to the next one.
And we are moving on to our next one, which goes to Halligan218, who puts in a 10 and says, "Exciting night tonight, and congrats on the well-deserved recognition, and welcome back to Enforcer Matt." And thank you very much. I said, everyone remember to drop a like if you haven't already. And also, by the way, folks, we are actually up to 3,000 likes. We're 40 away, actually, from 3,000, which is tremendous at this time in the stream. And thank you all for smashing the like. And thank you, Halligan, for supporting the channel. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you, Halligan, for supporting the channel. I love that American Airlines aircraft in the old livery that they used to have that you got as the profile picture. Really cool. And also, it has been an exciting night tonight in every single way. I gotta say, remember everyone to drop a like. They're starting to climb, but can we reach 3K? Well, it looks like we actually probably will here in a minute. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support. Once again, amazing to be mentioned as a reference in General Petraeus' book. You all saw the quote at the beginning of the stream, and that is a very high praise to get from someone such as General Petraeus. Very high honor. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Next, big shout out to, let's see, Judy Whitehead for putting in a $15 donation and without a comment. And thank you very much, Judy, for that support and helping to keep us running. And that is very generous of you. And we also have a $10 super chat from VP the King, who says pizza fun and puts in 10 pizza slices. And says, welcome back, mate. And question. And I said that so robotically, it didn't even sound like it was a sentence. But he said, I'm looking to buy a Staccato XC. And what do you guys think of the brand Staccato? And I believe Staccato makes pistols, if I'm not mistaken, unless you're speaking about something else.
I believe that's right proper, yeah.
So, yes. So,
Whoa!
me personally...
No! The price!
I was about to say Staccato is very expensive. Like you can see here, it's $4,300 for that pistol. Although I think they have cheaper options, I think. To me... I personally would not buy them, but if you have the money to spend, I guess you're getting a Gucci gun is the best way to describe it, sort of slang way to describe it. I personally wouldn't pay that much for a pistol. You can get literally a honey badger for less money than that, and I'm not buying a 9mm pistol for that much money. That is sort of overpriced in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think it would be a cool pistol to own, but for that kind of a price, you could, hell, you could pay like a month's mortgage. Like, that's a lot of money to put into a gun. I would say that, if you wanted a good pistol, Browning High Power is a very good pistol. Maybe for one from FN.
Glock.
A Glock's pretty, I'm not a big fan of Glock, but Glocks are pretty good. I just don't like the fact that they don't have safeties, and also the grip angle is kind of weird, so you naturally kind of end up aiming the gun upwards into the sky, and you kind of have to like tilt your wrist down a little unnaturally to get it on target, at least to me. But let's see, what are other good pistols? Honestly, I'm a big fan of revolvers. I think the Colt Anaconda and 44 Magnum is a very good revolver, and of course the caliber you just can't beat. 44 Magnum is the most powerful handgun in the world, and that's not true anymore, but it was when it was made. And what else? Let's see.
CZ is pretty decent.
Oh yeah, CZs are really good. So I would say those, and also on top of that, like the most expensive one I've said right there is probably the Browning High Power. Probably like 1,800, 1,900, half the price of the Staccato. Still a 9mm, still with the same magazine capacity, but in my opinion, a lot more stylish and a lot more affordable, at least in my opinion. And also, the Browning High Powers and the FN High Powers were known to be wildly reliable and were one of the most commonly issued service pistols in the entire world, even to this day. But with that, I hope that does address that well, VB the King. But if you're getting a Staccato, goodness gracious, best of luck to you. I bet we're never going to see you put in another super chat again, getting one of those. But nevertheless, I hope you have fun if you get it. It's just that me personally, I wouldn't spend that much on one of those. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And our next one goes to Ryan Peacock, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Ryan, as well, for that very generous support. He says, I heard that a NATO country was donating some heavy lift helicopters. And have you heard this info? And if you and Matt get back into gaming, feel free to join my group on Icarus and look me up on Discord.
I'll look you up on Discord. I'll take a look around. And also, thank you for the invite and the offer. Now, to answer that question about the, you're welcome, Matthew. No problem. I'll be glad.
I was telling Ryan thank you, though. I wasn't telling you thank you. Man, you didn't invite me. It was Ryan that did. And also, what is Icarus, by the way? Is that a game?
I think it is. I haven't heard of the game personally, but I'm going to look into it. Also, another thing, yes, I did hear about the heavy lift helicopters. Those are being provided by the Germans, and they're the Sea Kings. These Sea Kings, I think, are neat. Me personally, I think they're really cool looking helicopters. They're getting a little old. The British were actually the first to send them, and the Germans are sending about an additional 6 of their own. And this is the kind of livery that they're in. They're used by the Deutsche Marine, the German Navy. It used to be called the Kriegsmarine, but, due to bad things that happened in the 1940s, they decided to rebrand for marketing purposes. But nevertheless, still, those are the helicopters that are going to be sent, from what I understand. Those are the heavy lift helicopters. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that well, Ryan. And thank you so much once again for the kind offer and the invitation, and I hope that does answer, at least to the best of my knowledge, where the heavy lift helicopters are coming from. And you know what's kind of stupid, Matthew, is that I'll sit there and know this stuff, and I'll read about it, and then I never talk about it on the news. Like, he asked the question, I've known about this, I think, for like a week now, and I just never brought it up. And then when he asked, I'm like, oh yeah, they're German helicopters, there's 6 of them being sent, they'll be there in like the next month, and it's like, why the hell do I never bring this stuff up on the show? This is probably good news to tell y'all, but nevertheless, thank you once again for support, Ryan. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Bartley, who throws in a $10 donation. And John says, I had an old girlfriend that told me my senior year of college, if your heart isn't about law school, then don't do it. And 10 years later, I practiced medicine. A total reversal, and thank you, old girlfriend.
And thank you for the support. And thank you to old girlfriend too, John, for you. And also, that is very good advice to live by. If your heart isn't into it, it's just not worth doing it. There is always a phrase that if you love what you're doing, you never work a single day in your life. And to be so honest with y'all, the reason why I feel like what we do is so nothing really is that it never feels like I'm actually working on this. Like, I always talk about how I'm working 60 hours a week, but it still doesn't really feel like work. It's just the amount of time I put into it, but still, I love doing it every single second. And that's something that I don't think will ever change. This kind of a topic, this kind of a subject, I always love talking about it. It's what I feel like this is kind of what I was like born to do. Kind of like, I'd like, not to sound like a horse or anything, but it's like what I was bred to do. It's in my brain to do this kind of a thing. And I gotta say, those are certainly great words to live by. I don't think I'm gonna become a doctor, but maybe I'll become the doctor that this nation needs. And that's why you'll need to vote for me for president in 2040. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Butchie777, who throws in a 10. And thank you, Butchie, very much for that support. And Butchie says, my morning LSA juice was always succulent, but it's sweeter now that Matt is back. And I love it. It said, Shoyu and Jaga Jaga.
Shoigu! Cherastimov! And also, Jaga Jaga. And still, thank you for the support. And the morning LSA juice has never been sweeter. Today of all days, it's never been sweeter. And I know, I know. You know what's about to happen, Matthew.
What happened?
You know what's about to happen. I'll tell you all. We were talking about it a little bit on stream. Now that all of these great things have happened all at the same time today, when all the stars align like that, there's going to be a spotting of some creature out there. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I want my hot dog with relish, mustard, ketchup, onions.
I would like the number 9, 2 number 7s, Big Mac. But anyways, I gotta say, thank you so much for being static with us, Butchie777, because today is a great day. And of course, thank you once again for helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mr. Lunchtime. He throws in a $5 donation of the lunch money. And it's good to see you again, Mr. Lunchtime. They said, welcome back to Enforcer Matt. They said the crying face and also the happy face. They're very mixed between those two emotions. Mr. Lunchtime is having a tough one here. They said to stay toasty, my friends. And thank you, seriously, thank you very much, Mr. Lunchtime. It's good to be back. And also, it's good to know that all of the channel legends and also the channel viewers are still all here, like I always say. But Enforcer, what say you?
The gang's all here. Man, it's like
Toad and Frog and the gang.
It's like SpongeBob when he was sitting there on the floor with the napkin, the chip, and the lint, and he's like, the gang's all here. That's
what I was doing through law school in the library. I was sitting there talking about the gang's all here on my computer, my law book, sitting there just absolutely wrecked out of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I went up to the 3rd floor of that library. I went to sleep up there. I was like, man, I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm passing out. I'm exhausted.
Oh man, every time I was going to the library, I was sitting there with the law book trying to read through the cases, thinking, I'm just going to put this in my backpack, get up, and walk out and never come back. I did that for like a whole month of this semester, and finally it was like yesterday was the day, or the day before yesterday actually. That was the day I actually did it. And just got up and left. And I tell you what, not going back, buddy. I'm like a prisoner that gets out of prison. I said, I'm not going back, and nobody can take me back either. Maybe one day my opinion will change, but for right now, my heart's not in it, not going back.
So what happened in between those 4 years of blank spot on your resume? I went to Yale. Oh, okay, well, you got the job. Thank you, I really need this job. huh? But nevertheless, beyond the stupid joke about prison, because Matthew was talking about it a little bit, I gotta be honest with y'all. I didn't really like law school. I didn't like it. I may have liked being an attorney, but you got to be able to survive law school to make it to being an attorney. And like clearly I cannot survive law school. I just couldn't. And you know, if people get a feeling of superiority, that's okay. But it's not the thing for me. You know, not. Yeah. But anyways, thank you so much once again for support, Mr. Lunchtime, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we're going to stay toasty. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who throws in a 5. And good to see you once again, Hoodoo. He says, NATO just signed a deal for 220,000 155mm shells for $1.2 billion, and that comes out to $5,400 for a single 155mm shell.
That sounds close to right. That actually sounds like a reasonable price for the shell, because a 50 BMG round right now on the open market is running about $6.50 a round. And 50 BMG, when we're talking about artillery scale, is not that big. Let me see if I can get a 50 BMG versus 155 millimeter. Probably a really big size difference there, but let me see if I can get y'all a picture to show y'all. So, well, you know what? Better yet, this is probably a good idea. Get y'all a good idea. That's a 5.56 M855 round versus a 50 BMG. I think that's like an incendiary round or something. I don't know what the silver tipped ones are, to be honest with you. But you can see that the size comparison is huge just in between the 5.56 and the 50 BMG. And that is the difference right there in between a 35-cent bullet and a $6.50 bullet. Now scale that up even larger and move on to 50 BMG versus a 20 millimeter. And this is the difference in between a 50 BMG right there and a 20 millimeter right over there. Doesn't really sound like that big of a difference, especially when you put a 50 BMG into metric measurements and this 12.7. Doesn't really seem like that would be a big change from 12.7 to 20, but it really is. And then we take 20 millimeter and we verse that to 30 millimeter. And I don't mean to like size y'all up through and through over and over, but here's the difference in between a 20 millimeter round and a 30 millimeter round. Just to put them side by side, you know, size comparison. You can see the 30 millimeter, while it doesn't sound that much bigger, it's pretty damn big. And then you keep on going up and up and up until you get to a 155 millimeter shell. 155 millimeter shell size. And this is 155 millimeter shell, standing at about 3 feet tall. So when you look at that, there is a really big size difference. And because of that, I think these shells will probably be pretty expensive, but I don't know the running cost of a 155 millimeter shell because I'll never have the chance to buy one. So with that, I would say that's an interesting thing to share with us, Hoodoo, and I'm not really sure if that is on market price or off, but it probably is on market price. But with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Squamous Tarkus. He throws in a 5 and says, I'm broke, overspent lately. And I got to tell you, Squamous, you know, law school wasn't free either. I'm in a little bit of debt myself, got to say. Wasn't a cheap lesson, but they said, welcome back, Matt. No, so it's good to be back. And they said, and congrats on the accreditations enforcers. And thank you very much, Squamous, for that support.
And thank you so much for congratulating us on the accreditations. And also, and yeah, I have to agree with Matthew, the debts are pricey.
Yeah, it was an expensive lesson.
It's a very expensive learning lesson, but hey, we learned. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Squamous Tarkus, for the support, and thank you for being an old guard as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Tom Exman, who throws in a 5 and says, yeah, Matt's back. Welcome back. Congrats on the book mention too. And thank you, Tom. It's good to be back.
And thank you, Tom. Thank you. Thank you for crediting me with the book mention. But I'm crediting that to Matthew and me because it said the Enforcer channel. But still, thank you so much once again, Tom, for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Michael LTNV, who throws in a 5 and says, Kimberly, will you give your dog a hug for me? And new job funding for your TV studio, LSA, Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, Michael LTNV. And Give your dog a hug, Kimberly. Give your dog a hug. Give it a big hug. I gave my corgis a hug today. One of them was actually out when I was driving home, which scared me because I thought I was going to run out of the tire. Instead, Sheba just walked alongside my car as I pulled it into the driveway and parked it. I was like, oh, isn't that precious? And then she came up to the door for the hugs and kisses and everything. It was a precious little dog. I love the dog. But still, thank you so much for funding for the TV studio, because we probably will get back into filming gun review videos here in the future. Probably not the immediate future, but in the future, and I cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to be so happy to do it. And so with that, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Neil Vizanant, who puts in a 5 and says, welcome back, Matt. And it's good to be back. He says, and the LSA is now in the history books. And what do you guys think about the new Army helmets with a full face mask?
I'm going to have to be honest with you, Neil. I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that for now because I don't think I've seen those new helmets yet. But thank you so much for welcoming back, Matt. And it is cool to know that the LSA is back in the, well, not back in the books. It's in the books for the first time ever. That is so cool to think. And it really just blows me away. It's such a high honor. One of the honors that I'm kind of like striving towards in life is that when I die, no matter what, people will remember that I was here and that I did something good for them. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Canbell7XI, who puts in a 5 and says, congrats on the big decision. And if the book credit isn't a sign, I don't know what is.
And I gotta say, Kanbei, if it isn't a sign, I don't know what is, because honestly, that was a pretty big inspiration last night for me to go, you know what? I don't need law school. I will be fine. I will do great without law school. That isn't going to be a measurement of success for me at all. And so I got to thank you for that, Kanbei. And I got to say, thank you for congratulating us on the big decision. And thank you for backing us up as well. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Octavian Tamarosunu, who I just butchered their last name. I apologize about that. They put in a $5 donation. And they said, Matt, ad infinitum. And I gotta tell you what, Matt ad infinitum. That is a lot of Matts. I gotta say, that's a lot. That's too many to handle, actually. But Octavian, thank you very much. It's good to be back, and also it's good that all the channel legends are still here, and all the other channel viewers are still here as well, including yourself. And Enforcer, what say you?
And Octavian, you with the amount of support you have for Matt just turned Romania into a pro-Matt nation. By the way, Matthew, while you were gone, Octavian actually told me he's from Romania. So that's
really?
Yeah, that's not even a play on our normal joke, which Octavian, I think you do know about our joke about Romania. It pertains to something of deep channel lore, and it has nothing to do with Romania itself. It just has to do with something else. But anyways, still, you've turned Romania into a pro-Matt country. Massive respect for that. And also, massive respect for the Romanians of today. Very cool people and a very neat nation. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Epic Trains Canada, who puts in a 5 and says, hey, I just got back to the stream and didn't know you withdrew from law school. Did Enforcer Matt withdraw too? And Igor in Slava Ukraine. And yes, I did withdraw. The Enforcer withdrew as well. And I'll just go ahead and say this. It was me who was actually the one who was like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm the first one. I'm going to have to go ahead and just put in the withdrawal because I can't keep going with this. It's too much. And it's simply not my interest. I have no problem with hard work. I believe in hard work. I love to put my mind to a challenge. But if you aren't interested in the challenge, that's not a good idea because you're going to end up driving yourself to insanity. And you're also going to absolutely zap yourself of all energy and morale whatsoever because you know that's where you're not supposed to be and there's something else out there for you. And you may not know what it is right now, but you might figure it out in the future, hopefully. I'm confident that I will eventually. But you know where you don't belong, and it's not good to stay there just out of safety or just because you're scared to make a big change. So I pulled the trigger on it first, and then the Enforcer was like, yep, I'm feeling the same way, so I'm pulling on the trigger on it as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, we were pulling triggers like a KGB execution squad. But on top of that, I got to thank you so much for the support at Epic Trains Canada. And yes, we both did withdrawal. And Matthew really summarized it really well. I was actually the last one to go. And that doesn't mean like, oh, I'm stronger. It doesn't. Like, I was kind of the one who was a lot more indecisive about it because I was like, man, it's like, if I don't do law school, what am I going to do? And then finally, I just said, you know what? Whatever I do, I'll do fine at it. I don't need law school. I don't have to do it. And there's a whole bunch of other things. Even now, there's a certain thing that we're both dealing with that we were talking about a little bit before the stream went live, where we're like, yeah, you see, that's one of those things that makes you go, yeah, I don't think this profession is for me. But we'll probably talk about that a little bit more, maybe in a week or two. Not right now. That's something that, while I'd love to be as transparent as possible with y'all, I think we'd have to talk about that maybe a week or two from now. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Epic Trains Canada. And yes, Trister, fire away. Fire away, Trister. But still, thank you once again, Epic Trains Canada, and Slava Ukraini. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Will Sharp and a $2 super chat from Jay King. They said, let's go, boys, let's go. Oh, let's go, baby, yeah, baby, woo! That's what I'm waiting for, that's what it's all about, woo!
But still, thank you so much to both of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we've got a 5 from Tony Stankard. He says, for the Anti-Law School Fund and Critters Unite and Slava Ukraine.
Man,
that's a new fund.
That's the antimatter fund for the anti-law school fund. I got to thank you for that, though, Tony. Because one thing I was concerned about last night is that many people, and I know that everyone was speaking from just pure concern and the best intentions for both Matthew and my future. But many people were very vehement that we should continue to go. And I'm glad to know that so many people who said that last night still support us even when our decision was the opposite. That's just very heartwarming to me. And I got to thank you so much, Tony Stanger, for being a part of the Anti-Law School Fund. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Josh Richardson, who puts in a 2 and says, the return, the goat. Haps Baps, you filthy animal.
You keep the change, you filthy animal. But nevertheless, thank you so much.
That's what that Mark Rober guy puts in that glitter bomb every time he throws it into a car.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's always that same thing from Home Alone. It's he throws in that audio track.
I didn't even know that. I don't watch a lot of those videos about the glitter bombs. I've seen it one or two of them, but I never remember this was like 4 or 5 years ago. But still, with that, thank you so much, Josh Richardson, for the support, being one of our British viewers and your first super chat ever. And of course, keep the change, you filthy animal. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in that 2 and says, welcome home, Matt. And yeah, and it's good to be back. I got to tell you what, LSA Sergeant Figment, it is good to be back. And Enforcer, what say you?
And welcome home. Remember when we went to Disney, Matthew, the Wilderness Lodge, and someone said that to us, and it was our first time we ever went, and our dad went, what? He talked to the guy who's like, what the hell do you mean by that? And then we found out that's a normal Disney thing, apparently. Kind of weird. But still.
They said, welcome home. Dude, I said, home? I said, it's too expensive to call home. You're charging $6 for water. We can't make this home. We can't afford to live here.
Dude, we dying over here from dehydration. But still, thank you so much for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment, and welcome home to Matt. And with that, we are on to the next one, as a never-ending stream of super chats continues to come in. It's just like, oh my god. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to another channel legend, Trister1. He throws in a $50 donation. Thank you very much, Trister1, for that support. He says, you guys do your own path, and be glad you clued in early on it and forge your own pathos. And I gotta tell you what, Trister, I'm glad that we're discovering it now, because we have incurred a little bit of debt. And I must say, debt whatsoever is not good, and it scares the hell out of me. But it's much better than the debt we could have had at the end of law school, and then decided, well, we're not actually going to be an attorney and go into that high-paying job that we thought we were going to have. We're actually going to go a different direction and make typically the average salary, and then have that much debt piled on top of you. That would not be a good situation to be in. So I'm glad that we clued in early as well. And thank you very much for that support. Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I do agree that we should forge our own path, or our own pathos. And of course, thank you so much for supporting us with that choice, Trister1. And I gotta say, it is good that we clued that in very early on, in just the very beginning of the second semester, instead of going through who knows how much and then incurring all that debt. That's something that I think was very smart on our end, and I've got to thank you so much, Trister1, for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. Folks like you make it possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that very well, and thank you, Trister, for being an old guard. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to. Also, real quick, I'm having a hard time multitasking because I'm not used to doing all this at once. So I actually had to type something real quick before I can speak. But anyways,
He's got to get back in the groove.
got to get back in the groove. I'm telling you, I've like been struggling multitasking tonight. Like I've been doing my usual like copy paste into the spreadsheet, put it in order, respond to messages, put up polls, put up announcements. And tonight it's been like, dang, like I don't know how I used to do that so efficiently 2 weeks ago.
Well,
but
man,
I'll have to get back in the rhythm of it.
If you want to know something that was really wild, is that I would be running the show and doing your job at the same time for the past 2 weeks. I've been doing that for 2 straight weeks, 2 jobs, and then going to law school. It was like I was really getting worn out doing that, to be honest. I was like, good God. I was like, this is impossible to do all 3 of these things. It was tough, but I completely understand.
I can imagine.
Because I was in your shoes and I was like, damn. I was like, this is adding a lot to it. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Marion Deemer, the Marion Deemer, the channel legend. It starts in a $30 donation and does not leave a super sticker or a question whatsoever, sadly. But Marion, thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
Oh yeah, thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemer, and helping this channel to keep on running. The support came in with no comment. But nevertheless, while there is no comment, the support does help us to keep this thing rolling. And thank you so much once again for making it possible. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one is a 2 from Wyatt Logan, who says, congrats, guys.
And thank you, Wyatt. And congrats to you too. And thank you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Neil Vizanon, who puts in a 2 as well and says, new helmet, eye hips, full mask.
Let's take a look at that. Eye hips with a full mask. Eye hips, full mask. That's what.
I say, good sir. That's a very good headlock you have there. Very good. He knows his judo well.
Oh,
Get your hands off my.
Get your hands off my. This is the bloke that grabbed me by the. I can't find the headpiece. I'm looking over here. Actually, Neil, I can't find it. I pulled it up exactly. Eye hips, full mask. I typed that in. And I'm not finding it. I'm finding the eye hips helmet, but I'm not finding the one with the face mask. I hate to say that. If you could send that to us, though, over Twitter on our DMs, we'll make sure to address that, though, tomorrow, probably, in the question segment, or I'll address it to you on Twitter. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Neil. I hate I can't answer that here live on air. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, folks, our Twitter posts will be getting back to full steam ahead like they used to be a few weeks back, because the Enforcer was retweeting and doing that good stuff. But I'm going to get back to full-time Twitter, full-time research, because the retweets are good, but I also like to add a couple of our like unique like analysis posts as well to it. And I understandably so, the Enforcer wasn't able to get around to that most of the time because there's so much on his plate. But we shall get back to that, because the Twitter is becoming a pretty good part of getting our news out when the stream is not running. So also it helps us compile the news as well, and helps me come up with polls and stuff like that. So we'll be back to it very soon. In fact, tomorrow. But with that being said, we are fresh out of Super Chat questions. So thank you all once again for the support tonight and helping to keep this thing running. And we also are moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we have the whole roster. Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightlines LSO, and also David Millsaps. They said tonight's Morse code copy is, through the marches of them people will know of the feats of the LSA and the Enforcer channel. And long live the LSA.
And that is the Morse code message of the night. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the correct message. And I gotta thank y'all for getting it right. The Lee Spring Army will continue to march through the passage of time and will never truly die. And y'all are wondering, where in the world is he getting those lines from? I'm getting those from the Warhammer 40k intro. Check it out. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support and making this thing possible, and also deciphering that Morse code message. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into the live chats. Over the past 2 weeks, I usually would make this like a free-for-all segment where I just read off anything that anyone added me on during this time. And I'll try and answer as much as I could. But
things have changed. There was a massive amount of super chats tonight, an unbelievably high number, which we are very honored that all of y'all found the channel worthwhile to support tonight, and the support was so generous, unbelievably generous. But sadly, that has greatly limited the amount of super chats, the amount of live chats that we're going to be able to get during this segment. So we're going to be answering 5 of them, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we're on to the first one.
And this one goes to Christian Cruz. It says, if the USA withdrew from NATO Europe, Europe will pursue strategic independence. And wouldn't that be a huge problem for the U.S. arms industry?
That would be a very big problem for the U.S. arms industry because a lot of our export market is in Europe and also within the Eastern Pacific, or more so the Western Pacific, actually. So that would actually be a bit of a big issue if the Europeans try to create their own independent sphere. On top of that, that's starting to fracture the Western sphere into 2 completely separate groups that can be tackled by the Russians and the Chinese as a combined alliance, one at a time, instead of both at the same time like it is right now. So that would be a massive detriment to the West if that was to happen in the arms industry as well here in America. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from Tesland who puts in the 5. And it says, an idea here. Maybe have a new foreign language word of the night comp for the LSA and a feature short history story of that country.
That would be a pretty cool idea. I don't think we could throw that into the stream because the streams are probably going to be very crunched for time as it is, like they are right now, because we've already gotten back just tonight into full-length streams like we used to do back in the day. And so going off of that, I think that would be pretty tough for us to do something like that, but I will look into it because that is a pretty cool idea. And of course, I love history. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again for support, Teslans. And with that, we are on to the third to last live chat of the night.
And this one goes to John Bartley, who says, our involvement in escalations in the Middle East might mean less we can do for Ukraine. And do you agree or disagree?
I would disagree, because usually whenever the United States starts getting pulled in multiple ways, our answer isn't to start drawing down from one place or another, it's to start to step up our abilities so that way we can be in all of these places at all the same times. For example, when the war in Vietnam was going on, that didn't mean that U.S. forces withdrew out of Western Europe. That meant that U.S. forces in Western Europe continued to be where they were, as well armed and well provided as they were before, but we ramped up our production and abilities to be able to support U.S. forces that were actively fighting in Vietnam as well. And also the DMZ in South Korea and everything else that was going on at that time. So it is not impossible for the United States to do multiple things. We always have in the past, especially during the Cold War, and we'll just step up to the occasion and make sure to keep things running like we did in the past. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to, excuse me, goodness. This one goes to Avari Mendebratis, who says, could Ukraine be secretly operating F-16s at this moment without discovery, and might explain recent deep attacks, but OPSEC?
Sadly, I don't think so. It would be very hard for the F-16s to conduct deep strike attacks because they are 4th generation aircraft that are non-stealth. They will be picked up on radar very easily, a lot like in really any other aircraft that we currently see in the skies of Ukraine. So sadly, I don't think they're the ones conducting deep strikes. Also, it is very hard to keep air assets a secret. Air assets naturally fly over a very large area, and many people may end up filming them. And the control that both sides have on the film and information that is published online is actually very thin. It's almost non-existent, the kind of censorship that the Ukrainians and the Russians are able to exercise over video and picture evidence. So if there were F-16s, we would have seen them by now. So I'd have to say I honestly doubt they're there, at least in my opinion, but of course, there's always room for me to be wrong. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on, and I can't believe I get to say this the way I used to say, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is AF Kaplan, who says, we have heard rumors about General Zelensky being dismissed before, and how credible do you think these latest rumors actually are?
I think they're a little bit more credible than prior ones, because we do know that there's now a decent amount of infighting in between Zelensky and Zelensky for some reason. We don't really know why, but for some reason there's a decent amount of infighting. So that makes this a lot more plausible this time than the last times when we didn't know about that infighting, or it wasn't happening yet. So I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can right now. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I gotta say, y'all, it's truly amazing to have Enforcer Matt back.
and it's truly incredible to know that all of y'all will be continuing to be here with us. It was a high honor to be able to know that retired General David Petraeus was mentioning us in his book about the war in Ukraine and how we are a revolutionary source on the news of the war. And I got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching tonight. It was an honor like every other, and certainly reminds me that the Lee Spring Army is incredible. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And of course, thank you all so much once again for watching. I will see you all tomorrow on day 708 of the news of the war in Ukraine, and we'll be covering the past 24 hours like we have been for nearly 2 years. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. It's good to be back once again. Thank you all for welcoming me back, and we shall see you tomorrow. And Slava Ukraine and Hero Slava.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.